From the top-down streets of 1997 to the sprawling high-definition worlds of today, the Grand Theft Auto series has done more than just let us live a life of crime. But what makes these worlds truly unforgettable are the people forced to survive them: the hustlers, the soldiers, the kingpins, and the broken men. This is every major GTA protagonist story, explained in the order of their games. Our journey begins in 2001, in the city that started the 3D revolution, a city of endless rain and silent revenge. This is the story of Claude. And the truth is, no one really knows where he came from at all. By the early 2000s, he was just a quiet drifter with no past, no ties, and no name anyone could confirm. But when he showed up in Liberty City, he got double-crossed, left for dead, and locked up. But Claude doesn't stay down for long. So, where does our man Claude come from? That's a question even Rockstar, the people who created him, keep very quiet. What we do know is this: by the early 2000s, Claude was a drifter, probably from the west coast of the US. A man with no family ties, just drifting from place to place. His last name could be Speed, could be anything, really. He's a blank slate, which, as you'll see, makes him perfect for whatever dark deeds Liberty City throws his way. Now, rewind a little back to 1992. This is where we first really see Claude. Not as the hero of Liberty City, but as a minor character in the sprawling world of San Andreas. He's already got that calm, serious vibe about him. Almost emotionless, just focused on the race. This is where he meets Catalina. Catalina, a firecracker of a woman, had just split from her old flame, a guy named Carl Johnson, or CJ as he's known. And wouldn't you know it, Claude ends up racing CJ. It's a losing effort for Claude. But in typical Claude fashion, he just takes it in stride. No complaints, no fuss. He hands over his garage to CJ, because that's just the kind of calm, collected guy he is. And then he packs his bags and he and Catalina hit the road, heading for Liberty City. Little did he know this road trip with Catalina would be the start of everything. For the next 9 years, from 92 to 2001, Claude and Catalina were a team, a Bonnie and Clyde of sorts, traveling across America, hitting up banks in places like Texas and New Mexico. Fast forward to October 2001. After almost a decade on the run, pulling off heists, Claude and Catalina finally arrive in Liberty City. This bustling, grimy metropolis is their new hunting ground. And what's the first order of business? A bank robbery, of course. They're hitting a bank and everything seems to be going according to plan. Claude is focused on the job, but then the unthinkable happens. As they're making their getaway, Catalina, the woman he's spent 9 years with, a partner in crime, turns on him. She points 2 pistols right at him, a cold, hard look in her eyes. "I am an ambitious girl," she says, "and you're just small time." Bang, bang, bang. 3 shots. Claude goes down, left for dead in the street. The Liberty City Police Department, quick to the scene, finds Claude still alive but injured. He's arrested, convicted on all charges, and sentenced to 10 years in prison. What a way to start your life in a new city, right? Our quiet drifter, now a convict. But fate, or maybe just pure luck, intervenes. As Claude is being transferred to a prison in Portland View, the police convoy is ambushed. It's the Colombian cartel. And they're not there for Claude. They're there to free an Oriental gentleman. In the chaos, Claude sees his chance. He escapes along with a fellow prisoner, a guy named 8-Ball, who's got a knack for explosives. Together they make their way to a safe house in the Red Light District, a small hideout in the heart of the city. So, Claude is free, but he's got nothing. No money, no connections, and a burning desire for revenge against Catalina. This is where he starts his climb up the ladder of Liberty City's criminal underworld. He and 8-Ball eventually make their way to Luigi's Sex Club 7, a seedy joint run by Luigi Gottarelli, a low-level guy in the Leone family, one of the city's biggest mafia groups. Luigi, seeing something in this silent, serious man, gives Claude his first job: drive a woman named Misty from the hospital back to the club. Claude just gives a nod, a silent agreement, and gets it done. He's calm, focused, and gets the job done without a single complaint. This is Claude's superpower, his ability to take orders no matter how wild and just execute them perfectly, usually for a price. He doesn't even flinch when Luigi yells at him, he just takes it all in stride. Claude's success with Luigi earns him more work. He's killing drug dealers, taking out pimps, anything Luigi asks. He's proving himself, showing that he's capable, reliable, and most importantly, effective. He's building a reputation. Eventually, Luigi introduces Claude to Joey Leone, a mechanic and another member of the Leone family. Joey quickly puts Claude to work. He's offing guys like Mike Forelli and Lee Chong, dealing with rival gangs, putting an end to their operations. Claude's willing to do whatever it takes to get what he wants. And what he wants is revenge. He'll kill anyone, work for anyone, as long as it gets him closer to Catalina. From Joey, Claude gets introduced to Tony Cipriani, another significant player in the Leone family. Tony has Claude battling the Triads, a rival gang, taking out their warlords, effectively weakening their grip on the city. His efficiency and quiet competence finally get him noticed by the big boss himself, Salvatore Leone, the Don of the family. Salvatore sees nothing but good things for Claude. This is a big step. Claude is now in the inner circle, so to speak. Salvatore has Claude looking after his girl, Maria, for an evening, a task that will come back to bite Salvatore later. He also assigns Claude to kill Curly Bob, a snitch who's been selling secrets to the Colombian cartel, which ironically Catalina is now co-leading. Then he sends Claude to destroy a massive freighter, a floating factory for a new drug called Spank, a drug that will cause a lot of trouble in Liberty City. During this time, Claude also takes on jobs from other small-time players. There's El Burro, the leader of the Diablos, a street gang, who needs help with various tasks, and there's Marty Chunks, a butcher with a whole lot of problems he needs Claude to fix. Claude helps them all without a word, just a nod, getting the job done. This shows he's purely mercenary nature, but he's not tied to any one gang. He'll play all sides if it benefits him. Claude is on a roll. He's destroyed the Spank freighter. He's earned the trust of Salvatore Leone, but in this world, trust is a fleeting thing. Salvatore, paranoid after the freighter incident and maybe a little jealous, decides Claude is a loose end. He sets a trap, telling Claude to get into a car that's rigged with a bomb. But Maria, Salvatore's girl, who Claude was assigned to watch, is smarter than Salvatore gives her credit for. She senses the danger and pages Claude, directing him to a small pier. There they meet Asuka Kasen, one of the co-leaders of the Yakuza, another powerful criminal organization in Liberty City. Maria, sensing a way out of her own unhappy life, tells Salvatore that she and Claude are now an item, which naturally infuriates the Don. Claude visibly reacts in surprise to Maria's bold claim, but it's clear he's willing to go along with it if it helps him. Claude and Maria flee with Asuka to Staunton Island, leaving the mafia's territory behind. Asuka, being a shrewd businesswoman, isn't immediately convinced of Claude's loyalty. She's heard about his exploits, but she needs proof. And what better proof than to have him kill his former boss? So Asuka tasks Claude with killing Salvatore Leone. No hesitation from Claude. Salvatore tried to kill him, and Claude doesn't take slights lightly. He goes and gets the job done, showing his vindictive side, his cold hard pursuit of revenge. Now firmly allied with the Yakuza, Claude starts working for Asuka, eliminating various people who are causing her problems. She then introduces him to her brother, Kenji Kassen, and Ray Machowski, a corrupt cop working for the Yakuza. Claude helps Kenji with his own issues like settling debts and even breaking a man out of prison. He even prostrates himself to Kenji, showing that while he might be quiet, he understands the power dynamics. He also helps Ray Machowski stay under the radar, even helping him flee the city by plane when things get too hot. Claude continues his relentless pursuit of work, anything to get closer to his ultimate goal. He takes on jobs from King Courtney, the leader of the Yardies. King Courtney has him attacking the Diablos, but then in a twist tries to have Claude killed on orders from Catalina. It seems Catalina's reach is long, and her desire to eliminate Claude is just as strong as his desire to get her. But the most significant new employer is Donald Love, a mysterious and influential media mogul. Donald Love, a man with his own grand schemes, hires Claude for a truly shocking task: kill Kenji Kasen. But there's a catch. Donald wants Claude to do it disguised as a Colombian cartel gangster, driving a cartel cruiser. Why? To provoke a massive gang war between the Yakuza and the Colombian cartel. Claude agrees. He has no true loyalty, only to himself and his mission. Kenji had his uses, but now he's in the way, or rather, he's a means to an end. He will fight on multiple sides of gang wars, completely without hesitation. Asuka, completely unaware of Claude's role in her brother's death, is enraged. She launches a full-scale assault on a cartel-controlled building site and captures Miguel, Catalina's co-leader in the cartel. Asuka, driven by grief and anger, begins to torture Miguel for information about the cartel's operations. Claude, witnessing this, shows his vindictive side. He leaves Miguel to be tortured. With the information extracted from Miguel, Asuka sends Claude on a series of missions to cripple the cartel. He's stopping Spank sales, stealing shipments of the drug, anything to hit the cartel where it hurts. For a short time, Claude even finds employment with D-Ice, the leader of a subsect of the Southside Hoods called the Red Jacks. He helps D-Ice in his war against the rival Purple Nines. Claude returns to the building site where Asuka was torturing Miguel. What he finds is a grim scene. Asuka and Miguel are both dead. A ransom note is left behind, from none other than Catalina. She wants $500,000 for Maria, who she's kidnapped. This is it, the moment Claude has been working towards, killing and betraying for so long. Catalina has gone too far. She's taken Maria, and it's time for the final confrontation. Claude heads to the cartel mansion. He escapes an ambush, a hail of gunfire. He's focused, determined. Then he faces Catalina herself, who's piloting a helicopter raining down bullets on him. But Claude takes her down. The helicopter explodes, and Catalina, the woman who betrayed him and set him on this path of destruction, is finally dead. He rescues Maria from the Cochrane Dam. And here's where it gets a little hazy and frankly kind of dark. As they drive away, Maria, now safe, starts a long, rambling, annoying speech. You can almost feel Claude's irritation, even without him saying anything. The screen fades to black while she's still talking, and then a gunshot. The talking stops. Maria's fate is left unknown, but the implication is pretty clear. Claude, the man who uses people for his own ends and then disposes of them when they're no longer useful, likely did what he usually does. He saved Maria, but probably not out of any deep sense of loyalty or pity, more because it was part of his mission. And once that mission was complete, she was just extra noise. So, what happened to Claude after that? The game ends, the credits roll, and Claude disappears into the shadows of Liberty City. Rockstar Games have given us a few hints over the years. They've stated that he certainly isn't dead, but beyond that, his fate remains a mystery. He could be anywhere, doing anything. A drifter from the West Coast who somehow managed to bring down the biggest crime syndicate in Liberty City, all without saying a word. Later games have made small references to Claude's existence. In Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, he makes a brief appearance, still with that youthful yet serious face. His signature black leather jacket and those olive cargo pants. He's there when Catalina, still his partner at that time, races CJ. He even manages to silently intimidate CJ during an argument. And in Grand Theft Auto 4, there's a graffiti wall with R.I.P. Claude scrawled on it. Nico, the protagonist of GTA 4, can even find Claude's iconic black leather jacket in a safe house, a symbolic passing of the torch. Claude's silent rampage left him the undisputed unknown king of Liberty City's underworld. For the series' next entry in 2002, Rockstar took us back in time to the neon-soaked, pastel-drenched 1980s. We left Claude behind for a man who was anything but quiet. Welcome to Vice City and the story of Tommy Vercetti. Tommy Vercetti came to Vice City chasing power. Born in Liberty City in 1951, Tommy grew up in tough streets, learning early how to survive and fight. By 1971, a setup turned him into the Hardwood Butcher and sent him to prison for 15 years. After spending 15 years in prison, he was sent to Vice City in 1986. But Tommy wasn't looking to lay low. His story begins not in the pastel paradise of Vice City, but in the gritty, cold streets of Liberty City. Back in 1951, the year Tommy Vercetti first drew breath. His early life was extremely different to the empire he'd one day build. A young Tommy helping his old man clean the rollers in a printing shop. It sounds quaint, doesn't it? Almost idyllic. And for a time, Tommy actually imagined following in his father's footsteps, living a quiet life around printing presses. But fate, as it often does, had a much different plan for Thomas Vercetti. He would later say he lived a different life, and what an understatement. From an early age, it seemed the streets called to him, or perhaps he simply had a knack for finding trouble. By his own admission, he'd been living a life of crime for 20 years by the time he truly burst onto the scene. We also get glimpses into a strained relationship with his mother, which might have contributed to his rough edges and perhaps the hunger for something more, something he could control. Interestingly, it was in these early days that he befriended a young Sonny Forelli, a connection that would define and nearly end his life. Tommy quickly found his place within the Forelli crime family, one of the three dominant mafia forces in Liberty City, and at the time, arguably the most powerful. He was a natural, a man of action who rose through the ranks with brutal efficiency. By the age of 20, it's safe to assume he was already a made man, a true soldier in the family. Then came 1971, a year that would forever brand him the hardwood butcher. Sonny Forelli, now the head honcho, dispatched Tommy on what seemed like a routine hit in Hardwood. But routine it was not. Tommy found himself in a brutal ambush surrounded by rival gang members. Was Sonny testing him? Or worse, was he trying to get rid of him? Speculation is that Sonny himself orchestrated the setup, but Tommy Vercetti was a survivor. He fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness, killing every single man sent to assassinate him. 11 bodies lay in his wake. He survived the ambush, but the freedom was short-lived. The law caught up, and Tommy was arrested, staring down the barrel of 11 murder convictions. He was initially sentenced to death, but thanks to some unseen strings pulled by the Forelli family, or perhaps Sonny himself. Ironically, his sentence was commuted. 15 long years, that's how long Tommy Vercetti spent behind bars. A lifetime to some, a mere blink to others. The press, hungry for sensationalism, dubbed him the Hardwood Butcher. While he believed in the mafia code and a certain sense of honor amongst thieves, if you crossed him, he would go to any lengths to get even. His loyalty, though, was a double-edged sword. He went back to work for Sonny after prison, despite his strong gut feeling about the Hardwood setup. This shows a man who, for all his intelligence and quick temper, could also be surprisingly loyal and even a little naive. Fast forward to 1986, after 15 years of hard time, the prison gates finally swung open for Tommy. Sonny Forelli, having pulled some strings to secure his release, wasn't doing it out of the kindness of his heart. Oh no, Sonny had a problem. Tommy was too well known in Liberty City. A famous lethal ex-con wasn't good for business back home. But Sonny also saw an opportunity, a way to expand his drug empire into the lucrative Vice City in the South. So, Tommy was sent packing, a convenient solution for Sonny, both to remove a liability and to push his own agenda. Tommy arrived in Vice City with two Forelli associates, Harry and Lee, meeting the anxious, twitchy lawyer Ken Rosenberg at the airport. They barely had time to appreciate the vibrant Art Deco scenery before heading straight to a major drug deal at the docks. Set to meet with the Vance crime family, but this wasn't just a drug deal, it was a trap. There was gunfire, and the carefully planned exchange dissolved into a bloody ambush. Harry and Lee, along with one of the Vance dealers, fell. Only Tommy, Ken, and Lance Vance, the other dealer, managed to escape the bullets. This moment set Tommy's reputation, not just as a survivor, but as a man who could handle himself when the stakes were highest. It also showcased his temper, a key aspect of his personality. He was easily angered, quick to resort to violence, and utterly ruthless when threatened. When he informed Sonny of the disastrous ambush, the reply was, Sonny Forelli was not a man to be screwed with, and he wanted his money and his drugs back. Now. Tommy found himself in a precarious position, indebted to a dangerous man and stranded in a city where he knew no one. He started by working for Ken, getting around the city's corrupt legal system, starting riots and intimidating jurors. Classic muscle work. During his chaotic period, he met Lance Vance, who, like Tommy, was burning with a desire for revenge for his slain brother. Tommy was initially distrustful of Lance, a young, flashy, and somewhat reckless character, but he recognized a shared goal. The pieces slowly began to fall into place. Juan Cortez, the pleasant and mysterious middleman in the failed drug deal, was Tommy's next step up. Cortez started digging into the ambush, providing Tommy with his first real leads. But Cortez also had his own agenda, tasking Tommy with stealing sensitive missile technology chips and eliminating a loose end, Gonzalez, who had been talking too much about the deal. Tommy, true to form, preferred to get his hands dirty. Even when he had subordinates, he put his own plans into motion. He'd even personally step in if things weren't going as smoothly as he liked. Like when Lance was too lazy to deal with a bar refusing to pay protection money. Tommy just went and settled it himself. The trail eventually led to Ricardo Diaz, Vice City's most powerful and volatile drug lord. Cortez suspected Diaz was behind the ambush, a notion that set Tommy's sights on a new target. Cortez, playing a dangerous game, even had Tommy act as protection for Diaz during a deal with the Cubans. The Haitians, rivals to the Cubans, ambushed the deal, but Tommy and Lance, surprisingly effective duo despite their differences, dispatched them all. Diaz, seeing the raw talent and ruthlessness in the pair, quickly hired them. Their tasks included eliminating rival gang members who were skimming his money and stealing the fastest boat in the city for a major drug acquisition. Tommy's patience was wearing thin. He was a man driven by selfish ambition and a thirst for power. When Cortez, who had paid him generously and introduced him to Diaz, tried to send him on more errands, Tommy was impatient. He only agreed when Cortez revealed the job offered a chance for Tommy to gain personally. He had no time for errands unless they furthered his goals. He shrugged off Lance's grievances about his brother's death, focusing instead on learning more about Diaz's operation. This selfishness would prove both his strength and his ultimate undoing in some relationships. Lance, blinded by revenge, eventually made a rash move attempting to kill Diaz himself. It went south and Lance was captured. Tommy, however, despite his initial distrust and Lance's growing incompetence and negative attitude, still viewed him as an equal partner. He even let Lance in on the crucial counterfeiting setup at the print works later. When he would bust Lance's chops over the phone, he'd say it was because Lance screwed up, implying Lance had every right to call Tommy out if he ever messed up. This loyalty was what made Lance's eventual betrayal so shocking to Tommy, who initially assumed Lance was selling out their entire organization, not just him personally. Ernest Kelly, the wise old foreman of the print works, once said, "Tommy, for a raging lunatic, you're pretty naive." But for now, Tommy rescued Lance, and together they launched their audacious plan. They stormed Diaz's mansion, a violent, bloody takeover that ended with Diaz dead and Tommy Vercetti taking his place at the top of Vice City's criminal food chain. The parallels to Tony Montana from the film Scarface were undeniable. The arrival in a Hawaiian shirt, the violent rise to power, the building of an empire from a lavish mansion, the short temper, and the elimination of a former boss to seize control. Unlike Montana, though, Tommy would never succumb to his own narcotics, and he would survive the final mansion shootout. With Ricardo Diaz out of the picture, there was a gap in power. Tommy Vercetti, with Lance Vance acting as his partner, stepped in to take control. But Tommy didn't just want to run Diaz's old protection rackets. He had bigger plans. He wanted to build a real criminal empire. Tommy's next move was smart. He started buying up businesses around the city. On the surface, these places looked legal, but he used them to clean his dirty money and grow his power. One of the first was the Malibu Club, a popular nightclub that quickly became his. Then came the Cherry Popper Ice Cream Factory. It looked like a normal ice cream place, but behind the scenes it was used to move drugs. He also took over Sunshine Autos, Interglobal Films, and the Print Works. Tommy didn't just sit back and let others do the work. After buying each place, he personally helped make sure it became successful. He got involved in every step, showing he wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty when it mattered. Tommy believed that the important things should be handled by him, not left to others. His hands-on style helped him grow faster and keep full control of his empire. During this time, Tommy worked with all kinds of people from Vice City's criminal world. He had to deal with both the Cuban gang led by Humberto Rabina and the Haitian gang led by Auntie Poulette. He played both sides, helping each gang attack the other. Sometimes he didn't have a choice. Auntie Poulette would drug him, so he'd do what she wanted. He also took jobs from Avery Carrington, a flashy real estate businessman, and Phil Cassidy, a gun dealer with one arm. A mysterious man known only as Mr. Black hired Tommy for hitman work and called him Mr. Teal. Tommy even worked with Mitch Baker, the leader of a biker gang. Mitch often talked about being betrayed by his country in the Vietnam War. Tommy seemed to get it. He would sometimes make sarcastic comments about the military and police, especially when they were chasing him. He clearly didn't like the government and thought wars like Vietnam were terrible. Another person in Tommy's circle was Kent Paul, the oddball manager of the rock band Love Fist. Somehow they ended up working together more than once. But Tommy wasn't all business. He showed he had a heart too. He truly cared about Ernest Kelly, the old man who ran the print works. Tommy saw him as a father figure, maybe because his own father had done similar work. When Sonny's men later hurt Kelly, Tommy was furious and clearly upset. Tommy also seemed to care about kids. He once called Maud Hanson a psycho just because she didn't like children. That said something about how he saw the world. Even when Colonel Juan Cortez was in serious trouble, with French special forces attacking his yacht, Tommy helped him escape. Maybe it was out of loyalty or respect for their past together. But even kings must answer to someone, and for Tommy, that someone was still Sonny Forelli. The Don in Liberty City was growing restless, impatient for his cut of Vice City's burgeoning drug profits. He began sending his men to collect directly from Tommy's businesses, a clear power play. Tommy predictably killed the collectors, but not before Ernest Kelly, the beloved foreman of the print works, was injured. This infuriated Tommy. It was a personal affront. He decided that then and there, Sonny would not get a penny of his real money. Instead, he planned a masterful deception, using the very print works he cherished to produce counterfeit cash. Tommy met Sonny in person at his lavish estate, surrounded by the spoils of his own hard-won empire. Tommy handed over the stacks of fake bills, but Sonny, a true snake in the grass, had a trump card: Lance Vance. With a quick motion, Sonny revealed Lance's betrayal. Tommy was genuinely shocked. His loyalty, even to Lance, who had become increasingly unreliable, was deep. He couldn't believe Lance would sell out their entire organization, their dream. But Lance, driven by his own greed and perhaps a perceived lack of respect for Tommy, had made his choice. Tommy, now furious, finally said what he'd been holding in for 15 years. "You set me up in Harwood." Sonny didn't deny it. He just smiled and mocked Tommy, saying those 15 years in prison had always been part of his plan. The fight was on. A violent and chaotic gunfight broke out right inside Tommy's mansion. Tommy, calm and deadly, took down all of Sonny's men. Then he went after the two people who had betrayed him. He killed Lance Vance, someone he had trusted like a partner, someone he had shared everything with. After that, he faced Sonny Forelli, the man who had once sent him to prison and still thought he could control him. Tommy shot Sonny and ended it. With Sonny gone, no one was left to challenge Tommy. He now ruled Vice City without anyone pulling his strings. It was all his. The only one still standing beside him was Ken Rosenberg, the nervous lawyer who had stayed loyal the whole time. Together, they were now the most powerful men in Vice City. Tommy, once feared as the Harwood Butcher, had risen to become the king of Vice City. After the chaos of 1986, Tommy Vercetti became the top crime boss in Vice City. His power was huge, and everyone knew his name. But being in control also meant being alone. Even someone as powerful as Tommy had personal struggles. His friendship with Ken Rosenberg, his loyal but anxious advisor, began to fall apart. Ken had a serious cocaine problem, which wasn't unusual in a city full of parties and drugs. Surprisingly, Tommy decided to help him. He sent Ken to rehab at the Fort Carson Medical Center in San Andreas. By 1992, Ken had kicked his addiction and gotten clean. Still, even after Ken recovered, Tommy cut him off completely. He refused to talk to him and turned his back on the one person who had stayed loyal when others betrayed him. This showed another side of Tommy's personality. He was willing to help people when they were useful to him. But the moment they became a problem or weren't needed anymore, he didn't hesitate to leave them behind. Tommy could be cold and ruthless, even with people who once mattered to him. Ken once said, "Tommy, for a raging lunatic, you're pretty naive." Ken Rosenberg, still clinging to the past, mentioned Tommy in 1992 during the mission, The Meat Business in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, much to the confusion of Carl Johnson, who famously asked, "Who the F is Tommy?" Earlier in the introduction, a prequel short film to San Andreas, Ken even called Tommy, only to be met by a secretary saying Tommy wasn't taking calls. A subtle nod to a real-life dispute between Rockstar Games and Ray Liotta, Tommy's voice actor, over his perceived effort. But despite Ken's predicament, Tommy Vercetti continued to thrive. A mention on Kent Paul's website in 2002. "See, Tom, I didn't mention your name nowhere. Maybe you won't get us killed now, okay?" Strongly implies that Tommy was not only alive, but still a powerful, dangerous force well into the new millennium. Of course, the world of Grand Theft Auto is vast and ever evolving. In Grand Theft Auto 4, a graffiti Easter egg reads, "Remember, Tommy, you are still my hero." A touching tribute from Rockstar to the 3D universe. However, it's important to note that Rockstar has officially stated this was a little joke to fans, confirming that characters like Tommy don't exist in the HD universe continuity, which started with Grand Theft Auto 4. Only background elements like brands and radio personalities crossed over. Even so, references still pop up, like HD Universe variants of Tommy's businesses, the Malibu Club and Pole Position Adult Lounge, appearing as seemingly legitimate establishments. Tommy Vercetti's character made a lasting impression, not just in the GTA 5 world, but in gaming overall. He was even poked fun at in the game Driver, which included hidden Tommy Vermicelli characters wearing floaties. This was a funny reference to Tommy's weakness in Vice City. He couldn't swim, and falling into water meant instant death. But Tommy was a major step forward for video game characters. He was the first main character in the GTA series who actually talked. This was a big change that made the game world feel more real and gave players a stronger connection to the story. Technically, Tony Cipriani spoke first in GTA 3, but he wasn't officially seen as the main character until Liberty City Stories, which came out after Vice City. Tommy was also the first lead character in GTA's 3D era to have a full name from the very beginning. This became the norm for the characters that came after him. And here's a fun fact. Even though Vice City is full of rough language and crime, Tommy never says the word F in the entire game. Instead, he uses his favorite insult, prick. Physically, Tommy was a striking figure, a classic Italian-American look. Tall, swarthy, with dark brown, almost black combed hair, piercing brown eyes, and a perpetually rugged 5 o'clock shadow. He debuted in his iconic light blue-green Hawaiian shirt adorned with dark blue palm trees, complemented by a pearl necklace or silver chain in the definitive edition, a gold watch, stonewashed blue jeans, and white sneakers. The game even offered a new feature, player skin setup, allowing for custom textures. He was even recognized by the announcer at Hyman Memorial Stadium by his last name. A random dialogue during a Blood Ring event even hinted he was once a mere 90 pounds. In a subtle detail showing his intelligence, the opening cutscene of Cannon Fodder revealed he was bilingual, ordering coffee in Spanish from Alberto Robina, so he has at least basic Spanish knowledge. Beyond Tony Montana, Tommy Vercetti shared similarities with real-life mobster Joseph Iannuzzi. In the 1980s, Iannuzzi was sent to Florida by his boss, but their relationship fell apart over money, which led to an ambush. Like Iannuzzi, Tommy stayed loyal and even went to prison for his family. This all made him similar to Mr. Blonde, that's Vic Vega from Reservoir Dogs. Both characters did time for their crews and were hired by a mysterious man, Mr. Black in Tommy's case, which is like Mr. Blonde's codename, but the strongest connection might be with Vito Corleone. From The Godfather, Tommy and Vito both started with nothing. They rose through crime by taking out dangerous people and building their own empires. They each had trusted lawyers by their side, not just for legal help, but as key members of their team. Loyalty was everything to both of them. When someone betrayed them, they responded quickly and violently. Tommy, like Vito, made sure the people who worked for him felt respected. He didn't treat them like tools. He made them feel like they were important to his plans and future. Tommy Vercetti built his empire by taking what he wanted, becoming the king of Vice City. In 2004, the series exploded in scale, trading one city for an entire state. We left the 80s behind and dove headfirst into 90s West Coast gang culture. It was time to come home. This is Carl C.J. Johnson's story. Carl didn't grow up with much. He was heading home, but home wasn't what it used to be. Before he even made it to his mother's house, the past caught up to him. His taxi was pulled over, and out of the shadows emerged the grim faces of Frank Tenpenny, Eddie Pulaski, and Jimmy Hernandez, the notoriously corrupt officers of Crash. They weren't there to welcome him home. They knew Carl's history, and they immediately set about twisting his arm, framing him for the murder of a fellow officer, Ralph Pendlebury, a murder they themselves had committed. From that moment on, Carl was caught in their web, forced to do their dirty work or face trumped-up charges. It was a hell of a welcome home. When he finally reached the Johnson house, the sight was both familiar and heartbreaking. His old friend Melvin Big Smoke Harris was there, looking larger than Carl remembered. Then came the reunion with his siblings. Sweet, still simmering with resentment over Brian, and Kendall, his intelligent and outspoken sister. Ryder, another childhood friend, was there too, though his presence felt a little off to Carl, something he couldn't quite put his finger on at the time. Carl quickly realized just how much had changed. The Grove Street families, once a force to be reckoned with, had fallen hard. The cul-de-sac he grew up on, where old Reese, the local barber, still held court with memories of Carl's father, was now a shadow of its former self. Crack cocaine had flooded the streets, tearing apart communities and weakening the gang's hold. Sweet, the proud leader, seemed to have lost some of his personal strength, burdened by the responsibility in the absence of Carl. Carl, who still bore the sting of being cast out of the gang years ago, knew he had to earn his way back. He had to prove his loyalty to his family, to his brother, and to the very street that had shaped him. He had a deep-seated loyalty to Grove Street, a loyalty that even his 5 years away couldn't erase. And so Carl began the arduous task of rebuilding. He and Sweet worked tirelessly side by side, sometimes bickering, sometimes united. Carl wasn't the heartless killer of past protagonists. He had a complex inner world. While he had no problem with killing rival gang members who stood in the way of reclaiming Grove Street turf or sabotaging his businesses, he also showed a great remorse for killing those he once considered friends. Their mission was clear: reunite the scattered Seville and Temple families, bring the Grove Street families back to prominence, and drive out the Ballas, the sworn enemies who had invaded their territory. It was during this time that Kendall started a loving relationship with Cesar Villalpando, the leader of the Varios Los Aztecas, a rival gang of Sweets. At first, Sweet was angry, but Carl saw the strategic partnership it could lead to. Carl's journey back into the fold involved countless gunfights, turf wars, and difficult choices. He helped OG Locke, a truly laughable poser who fancied himself a rapper, unwittingly ruining the career of the actual rap superstar Mad Dog in the process. It was dirty work, but Carl was doing what he believed was necessary for Grove Street. He fought with a growing sense of responsibility, his actions often driven by a need to protect his family and what little remained of their legacy. He even displayed a fierce, aggressive side when Kendall was threatened, famously burying a construction foreman alive in a portable toilet for insulting his sister. As the Grove Street family slowly clawed their way back, they reached a second peak of power. They were planning a massive ambush to wipe out the remaining Ballas. But just as victory seemed within their grasp, the rug was pulled out from under them. Cesar Villalpando, always a man of principle, delivered the crushing news to Carl, Ryder, and Big Smoke. His childhood friends, his supposed brothers, had betrayed them. They were in league with Crash and the Ballas. Carl raced to the gunfight, knowing Sweet and the gang were walking into a trap. He arrived just in time, holding off the ballas to rescue a heavily wounded Sweet, but it was too late. Both brothers were arrested by Crash. The Grove Street families and the Varios Los Aztecas, shattered by the betrayal and arrests, practically disappeared overnight. Big Smoke, the man who had sat at their mother's table, became a formidable drug lord, taking over Los Santos with an iron fist. His empire built on the very crack cocaine that had brought Grove Street to its knees. OG Locke, now a famous rapper, was merely a front, his career managed by Smoke as a way to launder his ill-gotten gains. Carl's world once again imploded. Crash, always with their own agenda, dumped him in rural Whetstone, far from Los Santos, tasking him with eliminating a witness who had dirt on their corrupt activities. It was slowly becoming clear that Tenpenny and Pulaski were facing a corruption trial, a case that was gaining significant media attention. Carl, exiled and adrift, found himself in a new, unfamiliar landscape. It was during this period that Cesar introduced Carl to his somewhat unstable cousin, Catalina. Their relationship was a volatile one, built on a series of daring robberies across the countryside. Carl's naive personality often led Catalina to question his intelligence, but he went along with her schemes, needing the money and the distraction. Tenpenny reappeared, forcing Carl into another one of his convoluted plans. He introduced Carl to the Truth, an aging, eccentric hippie who supplied Tenpenny with massive amounts of weed. Tenpenny ordered Carl to frame a district attorney who was posing a threat to Crash. When Tenpenny demanded Carl pay for the drug shipment, Carl was forced back to work with Catalina, who now had developed an obsessive, almost unhinged crush on him. Carl met Woozy Moo, called Woozy, during a street race. Woozy was blind but very smart, and led the San Fierro triads. At the race, Catalina showed up angry at Carl, and she had a new boyfriend named Claude. Even though Carl was starting to feel loyal to his new friends, he still wanted to win. He beat Claude and Catalina in the race, and won the deed to Claude's old broken-down garage in San Fierro. After the race, Carl left the countryside and headed to San Fierro. He brought along the Truth and the shipment of marijuana that Tenpenny had left behind. When he got to the city, he met up with Kendall and Cesar at the garage, which was located in a rundown area called Doherty. At first, Carl was angry about the garage. He thought it was a complete mess and had no use. But Kendall, who had a good eye for business, saw something different. She told Carl it was a great chance to fix up a place that could become valuable. With help from the Truth, Carl brought in Dwayne, Jethro, and Zero, a strange group, but one that turned out to be very helpful. Together they worked on turning the garage into a busy, though illegal, car theft operation. In San Fierro, Carl began to change. He still cared about Grove Street, but his time away helped him think in new ways. He started to see things differently and began acting more smartly and carefully. He moved beyond just gang thinking and became more strategic. He set up a plan to plant drugs in a district attorney's car to get him in trouble. He tricked a violent gang, the Da Nang Boys, into leaving Chinatown, so he could help a triad leader. He used traps to catch cars without damaging them. He even helped plan a big casino robbery. Carl's partnership with Woozy grew stronger. They teamed up to take down the Loco Syndicate, the group supplying drugs to Big Smoke, and to stop Woozy's enemies, the Da Nang Boys. Step by step, he worked his way into the syndicate and took out its main members. First was Jizzy B, a sleazy pimp. Then came T-Bone Mendez, a dangerous and powerful figure. Finally, there was Ryder, the hardest blow of all. Ryder had been Carl's friend since they were kids. They rode bikes together on Grove Street, grew up side by side. But Ryder had turned his back on their family and helped destroy everything they stood for. Carl found him on a boat, and after a fast-paced chase, killed him. It hurt. It left Carl feeling a deep sadness. He had to do it for his family, for his neighborhood. But it didn't make it any easier. Carl felt regret, and that made him different. Unlike the cold-hearted main characters in other stories, Carl still had a sense of right and wrong. He didn't enjoy the violence or the loss. Even when people betrayed him, it affected him. After taking down the Loco Syndicate, Carl started making real money. The garage turned into a busy car theft operation, and his rental properties were also bringing in cash. He was getting rich and building his own empire from scratch. Just when it seemed like he was free from Tenpenny's control, he got a surprise call. It was Mike Terreno, someone Carl thought had died while working with the Loco Syndicate, but Terreno wasn't dead. He was actually a government agent, and he had an offer. If Carl helped him with a few jobs, he'd get Sweet out of prison. Carl didn't know what to think. He kept it quiet, but one day the truth found him at Terreno's secret base. The truth warned Carl not to trust Terreno. He said the man was dangerous and had his own hidden plans. But Carl couldn't ignore the chance to save Sweet. No matter what, he had to try. So he kept working for Terreno, taking on mission after mission. One of the craziest jobs was stealing a jetpack from a top-secret military base called Area 69. The place was full of armed guards and high-tech security, but Carl managed to get in and out. He gave the jetpack to the Truth, who said it would help him collect some strange green goo that had something to do with enlightenment. Woozy saw that Carl was smart and good at business, so he invited him to help run the Triad's Four Dragons Casino. When Carl arrived, Woozy gave him a share of the casino as a sign of trust. He just needed Carl to help getting it up and running. But running a casino wasn't easy. Right away, they ran into trouble from Caligula's palace, a rival casino controlled by the Mafia. The Mafia was powerful and didn't like competition. To fight back, Carl and Woozy started planning a huge heist. Their goal was to rob Caligula's casino. To pull it off, Carl had to get close to the Mafia. That meant pretending to work with them and gaining their trust. It was risky, but if the plan worked, it would hit the Mafia hard and prove that Carl and Woozy weren't afraid to stand up to them. Carl's undercover work led him to a strange connection with two people in the music world, Kent Paul and Masser. Both were tied to Ken Rosenberg, who managed Caligula's Palace, a fancy casino. By coincidence, Carl got pulled into their wild and messy lives. Before long, he was working closely with Rosenberg and even with Salvatore Leone, a powerful mafia boss. Carl ended up helping all three fake their deaths to avoid Salvatore's anger. Even though Carl was still young, he stayed calm under pressure. A good example of this is during the mission called the Meat Business, when he told Ken Rosenberg to stay cool and take charge, reminding him, "You're the boss." During this tense time, Crash pushed Carl to his limit. They were desperate, with their trial coming up soon. They tried to kill Carl, and did manage to murder Hernandez for turning against them, but Carl, now tougher and smarter, survived. He ended up killing Pulaski, the dirty cop who had insulted his family and tried to take his life. Then, something unexpected happened. Carl saw Mad Dog, the famous rapper whose career he helped ruin, trying to kill himself. Carl felt guilty. Maybe it was a small piece of his Christian upbringing that he still held onto, despite all he had done. He jumped into action and saved Mad Dog using a truck full of crates. Carl still wanted revenge on Tenpenny and Big Smoke. At the same time, Mad Dog had been forced to sell his mansion to a drug dealer named Big Papa. All of this pushed Carl to return to Los Santos. This time, he came back not as someone running from the past, but as a rich and clever man ready to take control. His first move was to take back Mad Dog's mansion by force. While working on Mad Dog's new album, Terreno finally kept his word. Carl finished his last job for the government agent, and Sweet was released from prison. But the reunion didn't go the way Carl hoped. Sweet, still loyal to Grove Street and its struggles, was upset by Carl's rich new lifestyle. He accused Carl of turning his back on the Grove Street families. Carl tried to get Sweet to leave the hood behind and focus on the wealth and opportunities they now had in San Fierro and Los Venturas. But Sweet refused. He was loyal to the block and didn't want to leave it behind. Instead, he dragged Carl back into the old life, insisting they take back their territory, which had fallen to the ballas and become overrun with drug dealers while Carl was gone. Carl didn't want to do it at first, but he went along. He jumped back into the gang life. The skills he had picked up in San Fierro gave him a new, smarter approach to things. Grove Street families slowly began to rise again, and Carl was back in charge, this time with more experience and a better plan. As they took back the neighborhood, Carl also got revenge on OG Locke by stealing back Mad Dog's rhyme book. This helped Mad Dog return to music and deal a hard hit to Big Smoke's growing power. The news spread fast. Officer Tenpenny's trial was over, and because there was enough proof, he was set free. Right after the verdict, the city of Los Santos exploded into riots. People were angry and took to the streets in chaos. In the middle of all of this, the Grove Street families led by Carl and Sweet took advantage of the disorder. They fought hard and won back nearly half the city, reclaiming what they had lost. Carl went straight for Big Smoke's stronghold, known as the Crack Palace. It was well guarded, but Carl pushed through. Inside, he came face to face with Big Smoke, a man who had once been like a brother. After a tough gunfight, Carl killed him. It was something he had to do to get Sweet's full respect and to destroy the empire built on lies. Still, it hurt. But Tenpenny wasn't finished yet. As the city burned and chaos continued, Carl and Sweet went after him. The chase took them across Los Santos. It ended when Tenpenny's fire truck flew off a bridge near Grove Street and crashed. His time was up. Back at the Johnson house, Mad Dog, along with Ken, Kent, and Macer, proudly shared the news of their first gold record. It was a big win, showing how Carl had turned things around for the rapper and helped bring his career back to life. Sweet, always focused on the big picture, reminded everyone that Grove Street needed to come first. He talked about fixing up their neighborhood and making it strong again. Kendall, thinking about the future, brought up going back to Las Venturas with Woozy. She hinted at the business plans they had and the new opportunities waiting for them. Carl listened to all of it. He had been through a lot: betrayals, victories, hard times, and big success. Now he had money, houses, and part ownership of a casino. But when it came time to speak, he just said he was fittin' to hit the block. See what's happening. He had made it, but he hadn't forgotten the people or the place that made him who he was. So, what happened to Carl Johnson after the chaos ended and the credits rolled? The game leaves us with Carl as a young man who's now very rich. He had a lot going for him. Grove Street Families was strong again. Mad Dog had a big music deal in Los Santos. Carl owned a busy car garage and other properties in San Fierro, and he had a big stake in the Four Dragons Casino in Las Venturas. On top of all of that, he even had access to a $60 million jetpack from his time working with Terreno, whether he liked it or not. It looks like Carl, Mad Dog, Kent Paul, and Macer were about to go on a world tour. Mad Dog talked about it in the final cutscene, showing that Carl had helped Kent Paul and Macer get their band back together. This was proof that Carl was becoming a major player in business and the entertainment world. There's a small joke in Grand Theft Auto 4 that hints Carl and some other characters from the older games might be dead. But Rockstar Games later said this was just a fun Easter egg for longtime fans, nothing serious. It was just their way of saying goodbye to the old game world and introducing a new one. So, as far as the story goes, Carl Johnson is still alive. If you want to see more stories like this, click the video on screen right now. CJ's journey took him from the gutter to the peak of San Andreas. For its next chapter in 2005, the series returned to the familiar rainy streets of Liberty City. But this was a prequel set before Claude's revenge, telling the story of a man we'd only known as a hot-tempered capo. This is the rise of Tony Cipriani. Tony Cipriani was born in Liberty City, but his story really starts when he came back. After 4 years in hiding for a mafia hit, he returned to find his old life had moved on without him. Once respected, now just another soldier, Tony had to start from scratch. He had a temper, a nagging mother, and a lot to prove. But Tony wasn't the type to stay down for long. Now, a quick note on pronunciation. Tony's last name is pronounced two different ways in the game: Cipriani and Cipriani. Technically, the correct Italian pronunciation would be Cipriani, but we're going to go with how it is usually said in the game, which would be Cipriani. Our story starts in Liberty City, a big, rainy, and crowded place filled with tall buildings and busy streets. In the neighborhood of St. Mark's, loud, lively, and full of trouble, Tony Cipriani was born. He came into a family deeply tied to old traditions like loyalty, respect, and the not-so-secret world of organized crime. Tony's father, though quiet, was a strong and important figure. He was a made man in one of Liberty City's powerful mafia families, someone people listened to and feared. That legacy stayed with Tony for his whole life. The memory of his father was always there, hanging over him. made heavier by his tough and demanding mother, Mrs. Cipriani. The Cipriani household wasn't your typical suburban dream. It was built right into the fabric of their family restaurant in St. Mark's. Tony lived there with his ma, and let me tell you, their relationship was something else. It was a roller coaster, praise and criticism, but mostly it leaned heavily toward the latter. Mrs. Cipriani, a woman of strong opinions and even stronger vocal cords, believed with every fiber of her being that Tony was failing to live up to his father's immense legacy. His dad was killed by another gang, and after that, the pressure on Tony got even more intense. Everything Tony did, every little thing, was met with a lot of yelling. She constantly told him he wasn't good enough, not strong enough, not like his dad. This constant yelling, this always expecting more, made Tony really mad deep down. He wanted to show her she was wrong. He wanted to be just like his dad, to step into his big shoes. He wanted her to respect him, but she never seemed to give in easily. So, what did Tony do? He followed his dad's path. But not to a normal job. He joined the dark world of crime in Liberty City, becoming part of the powerful Leone crime family. He wanted to prove his mom wrong and make his own way in the tough streets. Tony himself was a mix of different things. He was super loyal, maybe too loyal sometimes, especially to the people he worked for, his bosses. But he also got angry very fast, like a fire starting quickly. You could see this when he talked to people. He was often around some really weird folks, and their strange ways just annoyed him. He really believed in being respectful, especially to parents. This made his own mother's constant nagging even harder for him to take. When he got really mad, Tony could do very bad, violent things like using an axe to kill a man and cut up his body, or blowing up a whole part of the city with bombs. But here's the interesting part. This tough guy, this gangster, sometimes felt bad about what he did. He would go to a church, a cathedral, and talk to a priest, trying to get rid of his bad feelings. It showed that he still had a part of him that knew right from wrong, even with the hard life he lived. But even with that, he never stopped to think twice about killing anyone who got in his way. He often made fun of them too. And just like another famous tough guy from Liberty City, Claude, Tony would often make a rude hand gesture to drivers who cut him off or tried to hit him with their cars. He had this street-smart attitude, strong desire to stay alive, and a clear message: don't mess with me. Life in the Leone family was a hard school, but Tony learned fast. He found out how things worked. He started to make a name for himself. Then the boss, Salvatore Leone, told him to do something that would really change Tony's life. It was to kill a made man. That's someone important from another crime family. Doing this kind of thing made you strong in the crime world, but it also made you a target. This killing was so big it caused so much trouble for the power balance in the city that Tony had to leave. For 4 years, he was forced to leave Liberty City and live somewhere else, away from the streets he was familiar with and the resentment there. 4 years away from everything he knew, everything he was trying to build. He was probably always thinking about what he had done, and his mom's disappointment was always there. He probably spent those years feeling angry inside, holding grudges, planning his return, and maybe, just maybe, he didn't eat as much as he should have. Because when he finally came back in 1998, stepping back into the warm, crime-filled air of Liberty City, he was noticeably thinner. This was a detail that his mom and others would definitely notice and comment on. So, this brings us to the main part of his story, the time that happened 3 years before the Grand Theft Auto 3 game. In a game called Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories, Tony was back and he was ready to get his place back, to keep his life of crime going and to finally make his mother stop yelling at him. Salvatore Leone was a smart and tricky boss, and he was thankful for Tony's loyalty in the past, but things had moved on while Tony was gone. 4 years is a long time in the fast, dangerous world of the mafia. Other men who wanted to move up had done so. Salvatore, being a smart boss, had to take away Tony's old job and give it to a younger man who was still in the city, Vincenzo Chili. Tony was just a low-level worker again. He had to start over, to fight his way back up to earn Salvatore's trust and get a leadership role in the family. And Vincenzo, oh man, the bad feelings between them started right away and were very clear. Vincenzo was probably happy about Tony's problem, being smug and protective of his new spot. It was a fight between two different people, two different goals, and old grudges. Tony, who already got angry easily, found Vincenzo to be a constant annoyance. One mission, called Hot Wheels, shows just how much they hated each other. Tony hears Vincenzo on the phone, clearly getting something sexual from a sex worker named Cheryl, all while trying to talk to his own mother. Tony, who really believes in respecting parents, is totally disgusted. He yells at Vincenzo for being so rude, showing his own strict ideas about what's right, even though he works in a crime family. This early fight between them was like a bomb waiting to go off, and it didn't take long for Vincenzo to stab Tony in the back. This led to Tony killing Vincenzo in a very bloody way, in a mission called the Portland Chainsaw Masquerade. It was a cruel personal revenge. A clear message that you don't mess with Tony Cipriani. As Tony worked hard to get back in Salvatore's good graces, he also got caught up with Maria Latorre. She was Salvatore's wife, and she was always changing her mood and looking for attention. Maria, who was full of strong feelings and bad intentions, quickly became oddly interested in Tony, but he didn't feel the same way about her. She would make him do strange and dangerous things for her. Tony, always loyal to the family, would do them, probably with a sigh and a frown. He even got back at someone for hurting her, killing Cedric Wayne, fathering Gay, and biker Heat. But Maria's feelings, like most things about her, didn't last. Once she found out Tony had no money, she quickly dropped him. She told him that she was Salvatore's girl, and he shouldn't even think about trying to be with her. Tony, probably happy to be free of her controlling ways, just moved on. He had bigger things to worry about, like getting rid of other crime gangs. Tony's main goal during this time was to break down the two other big crime families, the Forellis and the Sindacos. He wanted the Leone crime family to be the only one in charge, no one else. This meant doing a lot of violent and smart attacks. He was slowly breaking down their businesses, stopping their plans, and killing their important members. One of these people was Giovanni Casa, a businessman who had stopped paying protection money. This money, oddly enough, Tony hinted, was owed to his own mother. In a mission called Dead Meat, Tony brutally kills Casa using an axe and then cuts up his body. This was a very disturbing show of how cruel and smart Tony could be when his families, both his real family and his crime family, money was threatened. All of these hard efforts did not go unnoticed. Halfway through the story, Tony did a very important killing for Salvatore. He killed the mayor of Liberty City, Roger C. Hole. The mayor was seen as a puppet controlled by the Forelli family and a threat to Salvatore. This killing was enough to finally truly make his ma proud. For the first time in what felt like forever, she stopped a hit she had actually put on her own son earlier. Yes, his mother tried to have him killed and spoke kindly to him. It was a short moment of motherly warmth, a rare sign of pride, before she, of course, went back to her usual complaining by the time of Grand Theft Auto's 3 game. But for Tony, that quick moment of his mom saying he did good must have been worth all the blood and hard work. He was made. He was now a full official member of the Leone family. His place was set. He was no longer just a small-time worker. He was a capo, a boss. After he became a real boss, Tony started working closely with Donald Love, a strange rich guy who owned media companies and was running for mayor. Tony was helping Love for Salvatore, protecting him from the Forellis, who really wanted to stop Love from winning. Even though Tony tried his best, Love's secret ties to the crime world eventually came out, and he lost the race for mayor. Instead, the Forellis' man, Miles O'Donovan, became mayor. This was a big loss for the Leones. The new mayor, O'Donovan, quickly showed who was boss. He had Salvatore arrested on many crime charges, which was a huge blow to the Leone family. But Tony Cipriani's loyalty, which was a very strong part of who he was, stayed firm. Even with Salvatore in jail, Tony stood by him. He kept taking jobs from his boss, visiting him in prison, pretending to be Salvatore's lawyer to talk to him and get orders. One of these very important jobs was to kill the boss of the Sindaco crime family, Paulie Sindaco, in a mission called Dead Reckoning. This killing completely ended the long war with the Sindacos. It hurt them so badly that they had to leave Liberty City for good. Tony was slowly but surely taking down all the other groups, one by one, in a very violent way. Not long after this win, Donald Love, who was now totally broke because his links to the Leone family were found out, showed up again with a desperate plan to get rich. He asked Tony for his special skills to help him. Their work together led to one of the biggest and most destructive things ever done in Liberty City's crime history. They killed Avery Carrington, a rich businessman who owned a lot of land and was Donald Love's old teacher. They stole his important plans for building new things in an area called Fort Staunton. But that wasn't all. Tony, with bombs from a bomb expert named 8-Ball, then blew up Fort Staunton completely. It was a giant fiery explosion that changed the look of the city and, more importantly, hit the Forelli crime family very hard because they controlled the whole area. This incredibly violent act by Tony had two purposes. It made it possible for Love's company to get city money to rebuild the area, a classic gangster move, making money from destruction, and it completely broke the Forelli's power. This is another example of Tony's anger leading to huge destruction, showing he could plan and carry out big, bad things when he was angry. But even after doing such terrible things, Tony might still go to church, seeking that quiet moment of talking about his sins, trying to make sense of the horrible things he did and the person who still believed in some sense of right and wrong. As if his life wasn't messy enough, Donald Love soon became a target for a very dangerous group called the Colombian Cartel. He again asked Tony for help. Tony had to help Love escape the city, not just keeping Love safe, but also taking with them the dead bodies of Avery Carrington and, strangely, a journalist named Ned Berner. Tony had killed Ned Berner earlier in a mission called Stop the Press because Berner wouldn't give up proof that showed Love and Tony were involved in Carrington's death. During this busy time, Tony also started doing jobs for Toshiko Kazan. She was the wife of a Yakuza leader named Kazuki, and she felt ignored and wanted revenge. Toshiko wanted to hurt her husband by messing up his business in a cruel way. Tony, always doing his job, did what she asked. This finally led to a direct fight with Kazuki himself. Tony killed Kazuki in a fight, showing how good he was at fighting. But the sad result was that Toshiko felt so guilty that she'd kill herself soon after. This added trouble to Tony's life, showing how his violent world caused other people to suffer, and maybe even added more weight to his own mind. Finally, the big moment arrived. Salvatore was let out of jail. Tony made sure this happened by bravely taking him to the courthouse, knowing that the Sicilian mafia wanted Salvatore dead. After Salvatore was free, he quickly figured out that the Sicilian mafia, especially his own tricky uncle, was behind all his recent problems. To make their power stronger, the Sicilian boss, Massimo Torini, had kidnapped Mayor O'Donovan. He did this to stop the mayor from dropping the charges against Salvatore. Tony and Salvatore worked together. They found Torini, killed him, and saved the mayor from a lonely place called Portland Rock. In that moment, Salvatore, always seeing a chance, told O'Donovan that he now owed a huge favor to the Leone crime family and had to protect them from now on. The very end of this wild time was when Salvatore told Tony that Torini had been working for Salvatore's uncle. The uncle wanted to make his nephew, Salvatore, weaker in Liberty City because Salvatore hadn't been paying him money as a sign of respect. Tony, who had proven his loyalty and deadly skills many times, went with Salvatore to a tense meeting with Uncle Leone. In the end, peace was made between the Leone crime family and the Sicilian mafia. After this huge win, Tony Cipriani had finally, without a doubt, earned Salvatore Leone's complete trust and respect. He had fought his way back from the bottom, done more than anyone expected, and became a true strong leader in the Leone group. But in the quiet moments after their big win at the very end of the mission, the Sicilian Gambit, Tony looks a little worried. Salvatore had promised him a few $1 million for all his hard work, and it seems that money was forgotten. Now, let's jump forward 3 years. The year is 2001, and Tony Cipriani is no longer the thin, hungry-looking guy who came back to Liberty City in 1998. What his mom Maria and Salvatore said about him not being fed enough seems to have made a difference. By the time of Grand Theft Auto 3, Tony is much heavier, his body is bigger, and his dark brown hair now has clear gray stripes. He looks older for sure, with the stress of his life showing on his face. He's changed a lot, both in how he looks and in his standing in the Leone family. He's become one of the top leaders, a boss with a lot of power and influence. His name means something now. Even though he's a big shot, some things never change. Tony is still living with his ma. Her constant yelling and complaining are still a never-ending sound in his life. She still tells him off, still reminds him that he's not living up to his dad's memory, still can't meet her impossible demands. It's a strange, almost funny way of such a dangerous man to live. He's often seen in his family's restaurant, which now acts as a clear cover for his crime dealings. The police, of course, are always around, trying to connect Tony and Salvatore, trying to link them to all the illegal activities and violence that come from the Leone family. But in 2001, the police haven't been able to make a clear link beyond the restaurant itself. Tony is good at keeping things clean, or at least making them seem clean. This is when a quiet guy named Claude, the main character of Grand Theft Auto 3, enters Tony's world. Joey Leone, Salvatore's son, introduces Claude to Tony. And just like many people before him, Claude finds himself working for Tony, doing a series of violent attacks on a group called the Triads. The Leones are in a very bad fight with the Triads at this time, and Tony sees Claude as a useful person he can use and get rid of later. Claude collects protection money from a place called Mr. Wong's Laundrette, kills 3 Triad leaders, and finally blows up the Triad-owned fish factory in Callahan Point. All of this is done because Tony tells him to. During this time, Tony's quick temper is very clear. He gets annoyed easily, gets angry fast, and his loyalty to the Leones is solid. He's the tough boss, focused on his job, no messing around, just getting things done. He even introduces Claude to Salvatore Leone, the main boss, which shows that Claude is useful and that Tony trusts him. His mother's endless nagging, though, gets really bad. It's so constant, so annoying that Tony, this feared mob boss, does something surprisingly normal, almost silly. He calls a radio station called Chatterbox FM to complain about his mother's constant yelling. It's a funny but also a little sad detail that makes him seem more human. It shows the strange, strong bond he has with his mom. He really wants her approval, even though she drives him crazy. Now, what happened to Tony after Grand Theft Auto 3? Well, that's where things get a little unclear, a little unsettling. The game ends with Salvatore Leone, the man Tony was so loyal to, being killed by Claude because Maria LaTorre told him to. This leaves Tony's place in the Leone crime family, and his whole future unknown. Did he step up to take Salvatore's place, becoming the new boss, or did the mess and fighting after Salvatore's death lead to Tony's own end? The game doesn't directly tell us. But the people who made the Grand Theft Auto games, Rockstar, put a small hidden message in another game, Grand Theft Auto 4, that gives us a chilling but maybe not definitive hint. In different places in Liberty City and GTA 4, you can see words written on walls saying that old characters from other GTA games are dead, including a clear RIP Tony. Rockstar themselves said in a question and answer session that this was just a little joke to their fans, a playful hint that probably isn't meant to be taken as completely true for his story, but it certainly makes you wonder what happened. So let's think about what might have happened to Tony, because he was so incredibly loyal to Salvatore. It's hard to imagine him just leaving the family after Salvatore's death. He probably would have tried to keep things in order, or maybe even get revenge for Salvatore. But the world of Grand Theft Auto 3 is a messy one, with many groups fighting for power. The Leones, even with Tony's strength, were definitely weaker after Salvatore died. It's possible that Tony, trying to take charge or get back at those who killed Salvatore, finally met his end in the brutal gang wars that happen all the time in Liberty City. Maybe he got caught in a shootout, maybe someone he trusted betrayed him, or maybe even someone from his own family took him out. A man with his temper and a habit of extreme violence is always at risk in that kind of life. His complete loyalty could have been his greatest strength, or in the end, the thing that killed him. His name and who he is were clearly taken from actors like Paul Sorvino and the characters he played, especially Paulie Cicero, from a movie called Goodfellas. That movie was a big inspiration for the GTA games. Even Tony's full name, Tony Guy Cipriani, comes from a character Sorvino played. There's also a clear link to Tony Soprano from a TV show called The Sopranos. They both have similar names. They both have ongoing problems with their mothers. Both moms even tried to have their sons killed. And they both ended up gaining weight, and of course they both had fights with other bosses in their crime families. Corrado Jr. Soprano for Tony, and Vincenzo Chili for Tony. You can even find an outfit in Liberty City Stories that clearly looks like what Tony Soprano would wear. And let's not forget the Bedfellas movie posters in GTA 3, a funny hint to Goodfellas, that shows Tony and other characters from the game. Tony's brutal climb secured the Leone family's power. In 2006, we went back to the Sunshine, this time exploring Vice City before Tommy Vercetti ever arrived. We followed the story of a good soldier trying to survive a bad city, a man who built an empire he never even wanted. This is the tragic story of Victor Vance. Victor Vance wasn't looking to rule the streets. He just wanted to do right by his family. A U.S. Army corporal with a strong moral compass. Vic thought enlisting would be the clean way out of poverty, but Vice City had other plans. Betrayed, dishonorably discharged, and dragged into a world he swore to avoid. Vic didn't become a criminal overnight, but once he stepped in, there was no turning back. Our story begins with Vic, a man of muscular build with dark skin and a shaved head. Though early artwork might show him with short black hair, he's usually seen in a blue polo shirt, stonewashed jeans, and white sneakers, looking like your average guy. But there's more to Vic than meets the eye. He's got a quiet intensity, a sense of responsibility etched into his features, unlike his more flamboyant brother Lance. And speaking of brothers, that's where Vic's whole story truly starts. Vic's got a tough family situation. His father from the Dominican Republic was a soldier, but his fate is a mystery. His mother, Janet Vance, well, she wasn't exactly winning any Mother of the Year awards. She was a white woman who frankly didn't seem to care much for Vic or his brothers, Lance and Pete. So it fell to their aunt Enid to raise them. But the reason Vic joined the U.S. Army was his younger brother, Pete. Pete suffered from asthma, and the medical bills for his medicine were piling up. Vic, being the big brother and guardian, stepped up, enlisting to pay for it all. He climbed the ranks, eventually becoming a corporal, and found himself stationed at Fort Baxter in sunny Vice City. This is where the trouble truly begins. Vic, still in uniform, reports to his superior, Sergeant Jerry Martinez. Martinez is a slimy character, and he quickly gets a read on Vic's desperate need for money. He starts sweet-talking Vic, trying to convince him to get involved in a little side hustle, drug dealing. Now, Vic, he's got morals. He hates drugs, believes they destroy lives, and he's totally against them. But Martinez, being the manipulative snake he is, presses him. He tells Vic it's a quick way to get that money for Pete's meds. Reluctantly, with a bad feeling in his gut, Vic agrees to pick up a package of drugs from Martinez's associate. So, Vic hops on Martinez's bike and heads off to meet his dealer on a yacht. As he's getting the package, all hell breaks loose. A group of hitmen ambush the yacht, tearing it apart. Vic somehow survives and manages to escape back to the base, stashing the package under his bed. He gets a pager message from Martinez telling him to lay low. Vic then goes back to Martinez's office, expressing his worries about the drugs, but Martinez just shuts him down. He then sends Vic to Phil Cassidy, a drunken arms dealer, to sell some weapons. Vic finds Phil Cassidy at a depot, completely wasted. Phil, in his drunken state, actually pulls a gun on Vic, thinking he's there to rob him. Once Phil sobers up a bit, he reveals that the money Jerry owes him was stolen by the Cholos, a rival gang who've taken over Phil's house. Vic goes to Phil's place, kills the Cholos, gets the money, and brings it back to Martinez. Back at Martinez's office, Vic walks in on Jerry watching a porno film with Candy Sucks. Martinez then asks Vic to pick up his favorite prostitute, Mary, from Viceport. He even offers to take care of the drugs under Vic's bed while he's gone. A seemingly helpful gesture that in hindsight was anything but. Vic drives to Phil's place, gets a red Stinger car, and heads to Viceport. He finds Mary's friend, Mona, who tells him Mary's at a party on Starfish Island. Vic goes to the party, finds Mary, and takes her back to the base, but not before having to kill a few guys who had paid for her. What Vic doesn't know, though, is that Martinez has set him up. When Vic gets back to the base, Sergeant Peppa is waiting. Furious, he's found the contraband under Vic's bed, and the presence of the prostitute is the icing on the cake. Vic is dishonorably discharged from the army, his military career and his hope of earning money legitimately for Pete shattered. He's called a disgrace, all thanks to Martinez's treachery. Now, Vic's on his own, out of the army and reeling. He gets a pager message from Phil, offering him some work and a place to stay. Phil, still drunk, is in a bad way. He wants to kill cholos, so Vic drives him around until he finds one, and Phil takes him out. It's a messy introduction to the criminal underworld, but Vic needs the money. On their second mission, Phil's even drunker, and he reveals that the cholos are planning to blow up his stash of boomshine liquor at a warehouse in Little Havana. This could ignite half of Vice City. Vic, with Phil's help, manages to save 4 cases of boomshine using a forklift, and they escape just as the warehouse explodes. Later, Vic encounters Martinez at Phil's place, casually smoking with Phil showing no remorse. Vic and Phil then help Martinez by stealing a truck full of weapons and delivering it to him. This is the last time Vic trusts Martinez. He's now officially an enemy. With his army career in tatters, Vic needs a new path. Phil sends him to work for his brother-in-law, Marty J. Williams, the leader of the infamous Trailer Park Mafia. Vic arrives at Marty's trailer and immediately sees Marty's wife, Louise Cassidy Williams, and their baby daughter, Mary Beth, looking miserable. Marty's a real piece of work, threatening Louise right in front of Vic. Vic, introducing himself, quickly finds himself on a ride with Marty, who explains his shady business dealings. Their first stop is a Malviento store, where Vic is ordered to kill the cholos who tried to whack it. They then take over a cholo store, Verdi, for themselves. Marty then has Vic steal 3 vehicles, defend his business from the cholos, and destroy their vans and brothel. After this, the cholos retaliate, attacking Marty's prostitutes, but Vic manages to protect them. During these missions, Vic develops a strong sense of sympathy for Louise. He sees the pain she's enduring at Marty's hands. Louise eventually moves to her sister Mary Jo's place, and Vic goes to console her. They start spending time together, even competing in a quad race. Louise later tells Vic she wants to collect her belongings from her and Marty's trailer. Vic goes with her, killing 4 of Marty's gang members while Louise grabs her things and Marty's wallet. They escape the trailer park, but the nightmare isn't over. Mary Jo later tells Vic that Marty has kidnapped Louise, planning to force her into prostitution. Enraged, Vic chases Marty's car, kills him, and saves Louise. To lay low from Marty's gang, Vic and Louise use the compound in Little Haiti as a safe house. With Marty out of the picture, Louise, seeing Vic's strength and capability, suggests he take over Marty's business. This is a turning point. Vic, with Louise's support, decides to embrace the criminal life he once despised. He hires some muscle, and together they attack Marty's loan sharking business, eliminating many of Marty's men and taking over his operations. This marks the true beginning of the Vance crime family, with Vic starting to gain real power in Vice City's underworld. Just as Vic's getting his footing as a gang boss, he gets a pager message to meet a family member at the airport, someone who's supposed to help him build his empire. Much to Vic's disappointment, it's Lance, his smooth-talking, troublemaking brother. Vic sees Lance as nothing but a headache, and he's not wrong. They have a conversation, get into Vic's car, and immediately the cholos, still angry from previous clashes, attack them. They manage to escape, though Lance crashes Vic's car. Vic then drives Lance to his hotel. Soon after, Marty's cousin, seeking revenge, sets Vic's new business on fire. Vic and Louise grab a fire truck and put out the flames. Louise spots Marty's cousin, and Vic quickly takes him out. Vic also helps Louise keep her baby daughter from welfare. As Vic's empire grows, he gets a pager message from Umberto Robina, the leader of the Cuban gang. Umberto, having heard about Vic taking over Marty's business, wants to work with him. Vic agrees, but Umberto, being Umberto, wants to see if Vic has the balls. Vic's first task is to pick up a package from a Cuban while being chased by other Cubans. Vic, being, well, Vic, succeeds and brings the package back to Umberto, solidifying their alliance. Umberto's next mission for Vic involved the Cubans' ongoing war with the Cholos. First, Vic is ordered to kill Cholos who are causing trouble in Umberto's neighborhood. Umberto also lets slip that Marty had caused him business problems, further justifying Vic's actions. Later, Vic finds a distraught Umberto, convinced the Cholos are going to kill his father, Alberto, who's gone to see wrestling. Vic finds Alberto safe and drives him back to Cafe Robina, all while avoiding the Cholos. Enraged by the Cholos' attempt on his father, Umberto decides to wipe them out for good. Vic and the Cubans storm a Cholo warehouse, steal their weapons, and leave a gift of explosives. The warehouse goes up in flames, killing many Cholos, including their leader. The Cholos are officially destroyed, with Vic and Umberto taking over their business. Meanwhile, Lance, always looking for a quick score, finds a new associate, Ryan Forbes, who claims to know about incoming drug shipments. At King Canute's Burger Bar, Lance is on the phone with Forbes when 3 robbers try to hold up the place. Vic and Lance escape, with the police mistakenly thinking they're the robbers. They make it to the Port Authority building, take Forbes' car, and Lance drives it to Forbes' place. Vic is introduced to Forbes at his apartment, finding him in the middle of a conversation with Lance. The trio, wanting to snag a drug-filled van without alerting the police, use a second van as a decoy. After Lance and Forbes deliver the decoy, Vic manages to escape the cops. But Lance's genius leads to another problem. He discovers Forbes as an undercover DEA agent. Lance holds Brian at gunpoint, but Forbes escapes and speeds off. Vic and Lance give chase, eventually catching him and taking him to a building in Little Haiti for information. Tied up, Forbes spills the beans about a dealer who can provide both money and drugs, but only meets one-on-one. So, Lance goes to the docks to make the deal, while Vic watches from a nearby building. It's a trap. What a surprise. The dealer knocks out Lance and kidnaps him. Vic, seeing this, gives chase, saves Lance, and takes out the dealer and his associates, the Sharks. Back at Forbes' hideout, they press him for more information on drug shipments. Forbes tells them about a contact at the White Stallions bar. Another trap. Vic and Lance find themselves surrounded by gay white supremacist bikers. They fight their way out, killing several bikers, and when they return, they find Forbes trying to escape again. They chase him down, kill him, and take his ID. Vic, fed up with Lance's recklessness, storms into Lance's hotel apartment, throws his phone on the floor, and threatens him. Just then, their mother, Janet Vance, walks in with her boyfriend, Javier, claiming to be clean from drugs. Vic and Lance, having been through this before, ignore her. Lance then tells Vic about files detailing a big shipment coming into Escobar International Airport. They go to the airport, only to find the files have already been sold. They track down the buyer, kill him, and get the files. Lance discovers the shipment belongs to Jerry Martinez, and the brothers decide to steal it for themselves. At the docks in Little Haiti, Vic and Lance take out some of Jerry's men, stealing 2 barracks OLs full of cocaine. They manage to avoid Jerry's remaining goons, but on the bridge to Washington Beach, Martinez attacks them in a Hunter helicopter, firing missiles. Thanks to the police, Vic and Lance manage to lose Martinez and drive the drugs to a new safe house. Back at the safe house, Vic calls Martinez, taunting him. Martinez, in a chilling turn, reveals that the cocaine belonged to Diego and Armando Mendez, powerful drug lords, and they will kill anyone involved, including Vic and Martinez himself. Lance, always thinking with his wallet, says he has a buyer, Spitz, who will pay for the drugs, making them untouchable by the Mendez brothers. At the North Point Mall, Spitz needs a stuntman for a horror movie. Vic agrees to do the stunts while Lance and Spitz conduct the drug trade. After the stunts, Vic and Lance head to Lance's apartment in Ocean Beach to pick up the rest of the drugs, only to find their mother and her boyfriend have taken it all. Who could have seen that coming? After helping Spitz with the film's stunts, Spitz sends Vic a message to meet Rennie at the Interglobal Films studios. Vic meets Rennie Vasselmeyer, a trans film director, and their assistant Frankie. Rennie tries to flirt with Vic, and Frankie bursts in, announcing their stuntman quit because Rennie touched his butt. Vic, in need of money and work, agrees to replace him. He begins working with Rennie on various film projects. With the cocaine gone, Lance starts to panic about what the Mendez brothers will do. After an argument with Vic, they get a call. The Mendez brothers have launched an assault on their businesses. Vic and Lance, with the help of their growing gang, manage to fend off the Mendez goons, protecting their empire. Soon after, Vic and Lance are taken to Armando and Diego Mendez's mansion on Prawn Island. Armando, seeing their potential, offers them a deal. Work for the Mendez cartel and they'll be spared. With no other option, Vic and Lance agree. Armando immediately asks who's been ripping them off, and Lance, without hesitation, blames Martinez. Armando demands proof. Lance convinces Vic to take photos of Martinez talking to the police. They use these photos along with Forbes' ID to frame Martinez as an undercover agent. With this, quote, proof, Vic officially begins working for Armando. His first task is to deal with bikers who owe the Mendez gang money. Vic goes to Vice Point, kills the bikers, even those trying to escape. In the second mission, Vic finds Diego, who's standoffish, but Armando orders Vic to eliminate 2 rival dealers in Ocean Beach. Vic takes out the first easily, and then a heavily guarded second dealer surrounded by prostitutes. Vic kills him and his bodyguards. Armando later tells Vic that Diego has tipped off the police about Vic owning the stolen cocaine. To avoid arrest, Vic uses a Maverick helicopter with a magnet to snatch the containers and drop them in different locations, destroying the evidence. After his jobs for the Mendez brothers, Vic finds Lance's apartment bugged by the DEA. Together, they destroy police antennas, leaving the DEA without any way to arrest them. After his stint with the Mendez brothers, Vic returns to Rennie. Rennie first asks Vic to help Gonzalez, an associate, protect his drugs while he moves them to Vice Port. In downtown, Vic meets Gonzalez, who reveals they need to move drugs belonging to his boss, Juan Cortez. Vic protects Gonzalez and the drugs from attacking boats belonging to the Sharks, ensuring their safe delivery. Rennie then asks Vic to protect Barry Micklethwaite and his client, the famous singer Phil Collins. It turns out Giorgio Forelli had given Barry $3 million and now wants it back. The Forellis attack Barry and Phil, attempting to assassinate the singer, but Vic manages to kill the hitmen and drive them safely to their hotel on Ocean Beach. Rennie also enlists Vic for a cheese commercial, where Vic performs stunts on a jet ski. Phil Collins' concert at Hyman Memorial Stadium is approaching, but he fears entering due to the Forelli threat. Vic is sent by Rennie and Barry to clear the stadium of hitmen. After Vic eliminates every threat, Phil arrives at the stadium, safe. Following his work with Rennie, Vic starts helping Gonzalez. At the golf range in Leaf Links, Gonzalez asks Vic if he knows how to play golf. Vic's golf game is legendary. He gets a perfect score by hitting a tied-up man who betrayed Gonzalez, impressing Gonzalez and starting a short partnership. Later, Gonzalez tells Vic to take drugs from a lockup at Ocean Beach to a deal at Washington Beach. Vic, driving a van full of drugs, is ambushed by dealers. Drugged, he calls Gonzalez, who, furious, orders Vic to retrieve the drugs and kill the thieves. Vic somehow gets the van and drugs back to Gonzalez. Gonzalez thanks him, but due to Vic's partial failure and the new enemies made, cuts ties with him. Back at Lance's apartment, after a brief chat, Vic asks who stole their drugs. Lance blames the bikers. Using a Maverick helicopter, Vic flies over Starfish Island, where the bikers are riding. During a shootout over downtown, Lance falls from the helicopter and Vic bails out as it's destroyed. After killing all the bikers, Vic finds Lance alive, and then takes a chopper and speeds off a ramp. Vic returns to Lance's apartment only to find him using the cocaine himself. Louise, also high, emerges from the kitchen, shocking Vic. After a loud argument, Lance, annoyed by Vic's constant nagging, runs out to his helicopter, threatening to spread all the cocaine over the city. Vic, in a desperate race against time, drives a hovercraft and manages to collect all the packages. Vic later finds a half-asleep Lance, who doesn't remember what he's done. Louise calls Lance's apartment, telling Vic that Martinez's men are following her and she's hiding behind a burger bar in Little Haiti. Vic finds her, eliminates Martinez's men, and rushes her to the hospital. Vic then begins working for the powerful drug baron Ricardo Diaz, who is well aware of Gonzalez's deal. Diaz sends Vic and Lance to steal Gonzalez's shipment. They head to the Pole Position Club in Ocean Beach. One of Gonzalez's goons drives off in a sports car, and Vic follows him, eventually stealing a speedboat loaded with drugs and delivering it to Diaz. Later, Diaz makes a deal with the DEA. In exchange for drugs, they'll give him heavy weapons. Vic and some of Diaz's men go to the meeting point in downtown. Gonzalez's men attack, killing Vic's henchmen, but Vic clears the area before the DEA agents arrive. He gets the truck with the weapons back to Diaz's mansion. Diaz later captures Gonzalez, wanting him to work for him and reveal every incoming shipment. Gonzalez has to fly out of the city with the colonel's drugs, but is threatened by the sharks. Vic serves as his bodyguard, protecting him as Gonzalez drives a truck to the airport and then boards his plane, escaping the sharks. But the peace, as always in Vice City, is short-lived. Vic and Lance meet with the Mendez brothers at their mansion. Armando and Diego, tired of their shenanigans, offer them freedom if they leave the city and hand over all their assets. Vic and Lance predictably refuse. They're immediately attacked and knocked out by Mendez bodyguards. They're taken, stripped of their weapons, to an area in Viceport, placed next to 3 oil tankers. The Mendez goons aim to finish them off, but in a stroke of luck they miss, hitting a tanker instead, which explodes, killing them. Vic and Lance escape, splitting up, knowing that they are now direct enemies of the Mendez cartel. Vic severs all ties with the Mendez brothers, as the Mendez brothers launch an all-out assault on Vic and Lance's empire. Lance sets up a counterattack. They get support from Phil Cassidy and Umberto and his Cubans. Vic and his allies successfully defend their businesses from the attacking Mendez goons. Umberto and Phil send a pager message to Lance, confirming they've also cleaned out the Mendez brothers from their respective territory. After the Mendez betrayal, Vic is informed by Lance that Martinez is trying to kidnap Louise, who's about to be released from the hospital. Vic picks up Louise, but then Lance sends him a message saying he's stuck in a burning building. Vic and Louise, taking a helicopter from the hospital roof, rush to rescue Lance. Lance reveals he was attacked by Martinez's goons who stole his money. After Lance retrieves his money from the dead goons, he leaves Vic, who takes Louise back to her sister's house. Vic returns to Diaz's mansion, finding out Lance has borrowed money from Diaz. Outside the mansion, one of Diaz's men tells him Lance ordered some high-tech gear near Mendez's mansion. Vic drives there and finds a van with equipment to control Armando's robotic servant, the Domestibot. Controlling the robot, Vic searches for the Mendez brothers' safe, containing the cartel's money. After completing a few tasks for Armando, Vic finds the safe and uses the robot's lighter to set it on fire. An angry Armando destroys the robot. Later, Rennie wants to get his 4th sex change, but can't leave his studio because Diego Mendez is furious with him for introducing Vic to Diaz. Vic helps Rennie by eliminating the Mendez hitmen and then drives Rennie to the hospital. After Rennie has undergone his 4th sex change, becoming a woman again, Vic enters the hospital and finds Rennie, Phil Collins, and Barry talking. Since Rennie is a target of Diego Mendez, Vic drives her to Escobar International Airport, protecting her from Diego's hitmen. After dropping Rennie off, Vic helps Barry protect Phil during his concert at Hyman Memorial Stadium. After defending Phil's concert both inside and outside the stadium and killing every Forelli hitman he encounters, Vic is thanked by Phil, who jokingly asks him if he wants to replace Barry as his manager. Vic even gets the option to buy a ticket to see Phil's performance. But the biggest battle is yet to come. Vic arrives at Lance's apartment looking for Louise, but only finds Lance. Mary Jo calls, informing them that Armando Mendez has kidnapped Louise and taken her to his mansion. Vic and Lance pursue Mendez goons who've destroyed Lance's Infernus. Despite relentless attacks, they reach the mansion. An enraged Lance rushes inside to avenge his car, leaving Vic to fight Armando's men alone. Entering the mansion, Vic confronts Armando, who delivers the devastating news. Both Lance and Louise are dead. Vic, consumed by grief and rage, fights Armando, who wields a flamethrower. Vic manages to kill Armando and makes his way to Armando's office, where he finds Lance and a badly injured Louise. In their final moments, Louise, barely clinging to life, tells Vic their relationship could have been special. Vic, heartbroken, tells her it was special. Louise, with her last breath, asks Vic to ensure her daughter is cared for by her sister, Mary Jo, before she dies. Vic and Lance then leave the mansion, forever changed. After Armando's death, Diaz informs Vic that Diego is hiding at the Mendez compound in downtown, an impenetrable fortress. Diaz also reveals a new Hunter helicopter has just been delivered to Fort Baxter, perfect for an aerial assault. Vic goes to Phil's warehouse, finding a drunk Phil mourning Louise's death. With Phil's help, Vic infiltrates the base, finds the hunter, and takes it to Diaz. Obtaining the attack helicopter, Vic leaves Diaz's mansion, determined to finish off both Diego Mendez and Jerry Martinez. He flies to the Mendez compound, exchanging some final words with Diaz. Vic unleashes hell on the building's upper floors, but his helicopter is soon destroyed by a rocket launcher. Vic enters the building, systematically clearing out Mendez goons. He spots Diego and chases him to the highest floor. On the rooftop, Vic is confronted by both Diego and Martinez. After a brutal shootout, Vic kills both men, finally avenging Luis and all the wrongs committed against him. As Vic stands victorious, Lance arrives in the helicopter, too late to help with the fight. Lance offers Vic 20 kilos of cocaine for a future deal. But Vic, weary of the criminal life and the endless cycle of violence, refuses. He's not interested in narcotics anymore. He suggests sending the money for Pete's medical treatment. The two brothers embrace their problems seemingly over and fly away from the building, planning to lay low and get out of town for a while. So, what happens after Vice City Stories? It's implied that Vic and Lance stayed low for a bit, out of the criminal game. However, by 1986, they're back in the drug dealing business. There's some talk of them stashing 20 kilos of cocaine in a farm in Panama, and while it's not explicitly stated as canon, it's hinted at. Now we jump forward to 1986, 2 years after Vice City Stories. This is where Vic, the reluctant criminal, takes on a new persona. He's no longer the man who despised drugs. He's immersed himself in his status as a drug kingpin, eagerly striking a deal with the Forelli crime family, supposedly with the help of Colonel Cortez. Vic's appearance has changed too. He looks older, less muscular, with dark, receding hair and a thicker mustache. His general American accent has also shifted to a thick Colombian-Mexican one. Vic and Lance arrive by a helicopter at Vice City's docks with 20 kilos of pure grade-A Colombian cocaine. Tommy Vercetti, representing the Forelli crime family, arrives with $2 million, driven by Ken Rosenberg, along with Tommy's associates Harry and Lee. Vic exits the helicopter carrying cases of cocaine, while Tommy approaches with the money. As the exchange is about to happen, a group of hitmen ambush them, spraying bullets everywhere. Vic, Harry, and Lee are instantly gunned down. Tommy and Ken manage to escape, and Lance, seeing his brother fall, flies away in the helicopter. And just like that, Victor Vance's story, the reluctant soldier turned powerful crime lord, comes to a brutal, abrupt end. But Vic's death isn't the end of his legacy. Lance, devastated by his brother's murder, teams up with Tommy Vercetti, one of the few survivors of the ambush. Their mission? To find out who was responsible for the ambush and the stolen drugs and money. With the help of Colonel Cortez, they discover that Ricardo Diaz, the same man Vic and Lance once worked for, ordered the hit. The drug deal location was leaked by Gonzalez, Cortez's right-hand man, as part of the prior deal with Diaz. Cortez, realizing the betrayal, has Gonzalez tracked down and killed by Tommy. After working for Diaz for a while, just to be sure, Lance loses his temper and attacks one of Diaz's fronts, only to be captured. Tommy, ever loyal, rescues him. With a stealth attack no longer an option, Tommy and Lance launch an open assault on Diaz's mansion, armed with powerful Colt Model 733 rifles. They systematically wipe out Diaz's gang, confronting Diaz, who's armed with an MP5 submachine gun. They defeat him, and Diaz lies bleeding on his mansion floor. Lance approaches him, declaring, "This is for my brother." Lance, aided by Tommy, executes the drug baron, avenging Vic's death. Victor Vance's story set the stage for the drug empire Tommy would one day fight. After closing the book on the 3D universe, Rockstar rebooted everything. In 2008, we were introduced to a new gritty high-definition Liberty City and a man chasing an American dream that wasn't real. This is Niko Bellic. Niko Bellic came to America chasing a dream. Born in war-torn Yugoslavia around 1978, Niko survived a brutal past as a child soldier and lived through betrayal, loss, and deep regret. By 2008, he had nothing left in Europe except enemies. So he followed his cousin Roman to Liberty City, hoping for a fresh start. But Niko's story was never about escape. His story begins far from the streets of Liberty City, in a place scarred by conflict, Yugoslavia. Niko Bellic was born there around 1978, growing up in a Serbian family. Life wasn't easy. It was hinted that his father was an abusive alcoholic, and his mother, Milica, certainly wished her son had a happier, more peaceful upbringing. Nico even mentioned to a friend later in life that their home didn't get electricity until he was 12. He also had a brother, but sadly he died during the Yugoslav wars. It's hard to imagine the dreams of a child like Nico, but he once told a friend he dreamed of being an astronaut. He even hid a painful truth from his cousin Roman about their aunt's death, telling him she died in a house fire instead of the horrific truth that she was murdered. Nico shielded Roman from that pain, showing just how protective he could be. The turning point for Nico, the event that changed him into the hardened man we meet, was the Yugoslav wars. He was just a teenager, somewhere between 13 and 23, fighting as a soldier for the Serb-led army. He was a helicopter pilot, an infantryman, and Roman even joked about him driving a tank. Just imagine that, a teenager caught up in a brutal war witnessing and committing terrible things. These experiences left deep scars, leaving him cynical, full of regret, depressed, and emotionally numb. It's a heavy burden for anyone, let alone someone so young. During the war, something truly devastating happened. Nico was part of a unit of 15 men, many of them his friends from his hometown. They were ambushed. Only 3 survived: Nico, Florian, Kravik, and Draco Brevic. Nico was convinced one of the other 2 had sold them out, betrayed their unit for some reason. He swore he would find the culprit and make them pay, not just for revenge, but to finally, hopefully, close the book on that horrific chapter of his life. After the war, finding a normal life was practically impossible for Nico. He struggled to find steady work. Meanwhile, his cousin Roman had already packed up and moved to America, to Liberty City, hoping for a new beginning. Nico, however, spent the next 10 years caught up in the European criminal underworld. This path eventually led him to prison in Europe. After he got out, he started working for a human trafficking ring led by a dangerous guy named Ray Bulgarin. Things went sideways during a smuggling run into Italy. Their boat sank in the Adriatic Sea, and everyone and everything was lost except Nico, who managed to swim to safety. Bulgarin, though, believed Nico had sunk the ship on purpose and stolen his money. With Bulgarin's influence stretching far across Europe, Nico knew he had to get out. So he joined the merchant navy, hoping to escape the reach of such a powerful enemy. 7 months later, Nico found himself on a cargo ship called the Platypus, which finally snuck him into Liberty City. He arrived with nothing but the clothes on his back and the hope of a fresh start. He'd been looking for a new life, the American dream. But what he found was his cousin Roman, who, despite boasting about his success, was actually drowning in debt from his gambling habit. Roman's assets amounted to a tiny rundown taxi depot and a shabby apartment. Right away, Nico found himself protecting Roman from the loan sharks breathing down his neck. He started helping out at the taxi business, and through Roman's connections, he met little Jacob, a Jamaican arms dealer, and started taking jobs from the Russian mafia. And just like that, the events of Grand Theft Auto 4 began to unfold. Nico's personality really starts to shine through during these early days in Liberty City. He's clearly suffering from a quarter-life crisis, feeling frustrated, confused about where his life is going, and just generally pessimistic. He's got this deep-seated guilt from the war, and he's a bit detached when it comes to human life. He'll warn people away from him, and he expresses regret about his past violence, but he also feels like killing is all he's good at. Despite all that, Nico is fiercely protective of his family, especially Roman. He's always worrying about Roman's gambling, which constantly gets them into hot water. He's a bit withdrawn around strangers, but he has good manners and shows a softer side with the women he gets involved with, like Kate McCreary and Michelle. He has an explosive temper when he's betrayed or manipulated, which happens a lot in this city. But he's also quick to help people who can't help themselves, even total strangers. It's like he has this idealism inside him that was bruised by the war. Think about it. He's always looking for a new reason to live. Even his friends like Roman tell him to let go of the past. He's also pretty business savvy, more mature and cautious than many of the colorful characters he meets, especially folks like Brucey Kibbutz or Bernie Crane, who are just wild. Nico also has a strong distaste for illegal drugs. He'll always turn down little Jacob's offers of marijuana, and he warns Packy about his cocaine habit. He also really doesn't like dealing in cocaine or heroin, though that might be as much about the heavy jail sentences they carry as any moral feelings. He's also pretty skeptical of American culture, seeing it as shallow and hypocritical, and he struggles to understand Roman's fascination with the country. But he knows it's still better than the instability and misery back in Serbia. He doesn't like American conservative politicians either, calling them hypocrites for preaching one thing and doing another. But he's not really a liberal either. The war just gave him a cynical view of all politicians. He has empathy, even for strangers, and will help them. Like Marnie Allen, a troubled young girl he meets, he gives her money multiple times to help her. He's surprisingly calm with powerful figures like Francis McReary, just asking for more money from him, which usually irritates Francis. The only person who really disturbed Nico was Darko Brevic. He was absolutely disgusted by Darko's drug addiction and how he betrayed their unit for such a small amount of money. If Nico kills Darko, he unloads 12 shots into him, one for each man in his unit who died, even after Darko is already gone. The only other person who visibly freaked Nico out was Eddie Lowe, a truly creepy serial killer. Nico's face is usually very serious, but with Eddie, his eyebrows are raised in disbelief and his mouth is open. He also rarely drinks alcohol when offered, usually asking for water. He does take a drink with Jimmy Pecorino once, but that was after a really tough time. He seems to enjoy a drink, but he knows when to keep a clear head, especially during missions. And a small detail, but a good one. If you watch him, Nico will never hit female pedestrians when he carjacks someone. He'll just pull them out of the car. Back to the story. After killing Vladimir Glebov, Nico is spared by Mikhail Faustin, even though Dmitry Raskolov wanted him and Roman dead. But after Nico kills Mikhail, Dmitry reveals his true colors, showing his ties to Ray Bulgarin and turning on Nico, even trying to kill him. This forces Nico and Roman to flee Hove Beach when their apartment and Roman's taxi depot are burned to the ground. This is where Nico really becomes a hitman, an associate of many different criminal gangs. Roman's girlfriend Mallory introduces him to Manny Escuela and Elizabeta Torres. Nico then gets involved with the McReary family, Playboy X, Dwayne Forge, and the Pagornio family. At one point, Dmitry kidnaps Roman to set up an ambush for Nico, but Nico rescues him. Then things get even crazier. Nico is forced into contact with an international affairs agency front, basically a government agency called United Liberty Paper, or ULP. They blackmail him into doing some country protecting work. It's pretty ironic, a war veteran, a criminal, now working for the government. Kind of. Ray Bacino, one of the mobsters Nico works with, finally helps Nico find Florian Kravich. When Nico confronts him, Florian, who now calls himself Bernie Crane, is completely different. He begs for forgiveness, saying he's gay now and that he wasn't the one who betrayed Nico. Nico actually forgives him and even starts helping Bernie with his new life. It's a surprising moment of humanity in Nico's brutal world. As a thank you for his work, the ULP finds Darko Brevic in Romania and smuggles him into Liberty City. This is the moment Nico has been waiting for, the moment he can finally get closure. He confronts Darko, who confesses that he sold Nico's unit for a measly $1,000, which he used to feed his heroin addiction. Nico is absolutely enraged. His friends, his brothers, died for $1,000 and a drug habit? The player then gets to choose whether Nico kills Darko or spares him. A truly heavy choice. If Nico kills him, it's a brutal, uncontrolled outburst of violence. 12 shots, one for each fallen friend. After this, Nico meets Jimmy Pegorino again. Pegornio wants Nico to do a heroin deal with Dmitry Raskolov. Nico is understandably hesitant, given the bad blood between them. This decision whether to make the deal or get revenge on Dmitry sets the stage for the game's ending. Let's look at the revenge path first. If Nico chooses to take revenge on Dmitry, he fights his way into the Platypus ship, the very ship that brought him to Liberty City, where Dmitry is loading heroin. Nico confronts Dmitry about his betrayals and executes him. This decision, though, leads to the downfall of the Pegorino family. Jimmy Pegorino, angered by Nico's betrayal, tries to kill Nico in a drive-by shooting at Roman Belic's wedding. But in a tragic twist, he accidentally kills Nico's girlfriend, Kate McCreary. Heartbroken and enraged, Nico, with little Jacob and Roman by his side, chases Pegorino across the city, finally cornering and killing him on Happiness Island. In this ending, a news report mentions Nico is wanted for questioning, but not as a suspect for the events at the wedding. His immigrant status remains uncertain, and the police and FIB are suspicious of him, even though he often claims he has his papers. Roman, though, said Nico didn't have a visa, and a newspaper article about the platypus captain's death confirmed none of the crew had visas. So, it's pretty clear Nico was in Liberty City illegally. If the player goes down this path, Nico tells Packy that he still plans to go after Ray Bulgarin, although Bulgarin would later be killed by Luis Lopez. After this ending, it's hinted that Nico likely gives up his life of crime, staying close to Roman and his other friends. He can still go on dates, but his love interest Kate is gone. Now, let's consider the deal path. If Nico chooses to do the deal with Dimitri, things play out differently. Roman dies in this scenario. After Roman's death, it's implied that Nico gives up his life of crime and stays close to his friends. He even hints to Mallory that her child won't have to worry about being fatherless, suggesting Nico will help raise her child and take on a fatherly role. This ending implies a more quiet, perhaps more domestic future for Nico. So, what happened to Nico after Grand Theft Auto 4? This is where things get a bit speculative, as Rockstar Games stated there are no true paths for GTA 4's story, meaning both endings are equally valid, but we do get some interesting clues in later games. In 2013, during the events of Grand Theft Auto 5, Lester Crest, a major character, mentions to Michael DeSanta that he knew an Eastern European guy making moves in Liberty City, but he dismisses the idea because he went quiet. This suggests that Nico might have continued his criminal life for a few more years before finally retiring. If Packy McCreary is chosen for a heist in GTA 5, he talks about his most successful job in Liberty City and mentions Nico, saying he doesn't know what happened to him, that Nico is probably dead. This hints that Nico might have completely cut ties with his old criminal life, including Packy, and is living a quiet, retired life. There's a cool Easter egg in GTA 5. After completing a mission called Reuniting the Family, you might see Michael's son Jimmy working on his resume. If you zoom in on his laptop, it shows a Life Invader, the in-game social media profile for Nico Bellic. On this profile, it says Nico now lives in Broker, still works as a taxi driver for Bellic Cab Service, and is still in touch with Mallory Bardas, Little Jacob, and Brucey Kibbutz. There's even a happy birthday note for Roman. This profile, especially with Roman as a friend, is considered an Easter egg because of Rockstar's stance on the multiple endings, but it gives us a glimpse into a potentially peaceful future for Nico. You can also find a wanted poster for Nico near a house in Sandy Shores, another fun reference to GTA 4's promotional materials. By 2017, in the Doomsday Heist update for GTA Online, Lester Crest briefly mentions Nico again when talking about Agent ULP, the government agent who blackmailed Nico a decade earlier, and in 2022 in the Criminal Enterprises update for GTA Online. Agent ULP directly mentions Nico, though not by name, to the GTA Online protagonist as a previous IAA-hired agent. ULP even uses the same exact phrase he told Nico at the end of their dealings: "You're out. You've done good things for us, and we are grateful. From here in, you're alone. Goodbye." This strongly suggests that Nico did indeed work for this government agency, and that he eventually got out of the game. Nico's search for revenge left a trail of bodies across Liberty City, but he wasn't the only one struggling in this new dark version of the city. In 2009, we saw the world from a very different perspective, through the eyes of a biker just trying to hold his brotherhood together. This is Johnny Klebitz. Johnny Klebitz wasn't born a biker, but somewhere along the way the road became his home. He grew up in tough Alderney, looked up to his soldier brother, and once dreamed of joining the army. But dreams shift, and for Johnny, that dream turned into a Harley, a gang patch, and life outside the law. He had morals, sure, but in a world full of betrayal, loyalty only got you so far. Johnny Klebitz, born around 1974 in a place called Actor Alderney, was part of a Jewish family. He had an older brother, Michael, who was actually friends with Billy Gray, the wild leader of the Lost Motorcycle Club, even when Johnny was just a little kid, about 10 years old. Michael grew up to be a soldier serving in Iraq, a completely straight and narrow guy who never quite understood or approved of Johnny's life on the back of a bike, surrounded by criminals. Funnily enough, Johnny, for a big chunk of his childhood, actually wanted to join the army, just like his brother, but as he got older, he started to see things differently. Got a bit disillusioned with how America handled things in the world and decided that wasn't the path for him. It was Billy Gray, the very same guy who would later cause Johnny so much grief, who brought a young Johnny into the Lost MC. Johnny's own records show he was pretty active in the criminal world between 1991 and 1994, which would have been when he was just a teenager, 17 to 20 years old. He even spent some time in prison soon after that, and then again in 2000 for breaking parole. He once joked that he hadn't had a proper salary since he was punching out license plates for a year in the joint. He also mentioned that driving a prison bus felt like driving an 18-wheeler, suggesting he might have had some experience driving big trucks. If you ever looked closely at his jacket, you'd see a patch that proudly declared, "I rode mine to Los Santos in 2004. Johnny wasn't exactly a picture of perfect health. He had a lot of scars on his face from countless brutal fights. A couple over his right eyebrow, one on his left cheek. His nose was noticeably crooked, probably from another rough encounter or an accident. He even had a weak eye, as he'd sometimes say, "Oh, I should use my good eye," if he messed up at a game like air hockey or pool. And from all the motorbike accidents he'd been in, his body was pretty banged up. He walked, ran, and even sprinted a bit slower than other folks. He even had a demonic face tattooed on the right side of his neck and a golden earring in his left ear, though that earring seemed to disappear in later years. Unlike some of the other characters you might meet in Liberty City, Johnny was a big, brawny guy, heavily built, perhaps from all that time spent in prison. He even mentioned he weighed 230 pounds at one point, and let's be honest, Johnny wasn't exactly a stickler for hygiene. He'd often sniff his underarms, looking disgusted, and even a politician, Thomas Stubbs III, once joked about Johnny committing a crime against hygiene because of his body odor. Johnny was a complex guy. Most of the time, he was pretty relaxed and laid back. He liked to think things through, really plan his moves, and wasn't one to jump into risky situations. But push his buttons and he'd get angry fast, turning aggressive and even violent. Despite being a biker, he actually had a limit when it came to killing. He hesitated to kill people he felt didn't deserve it. He even found it hard to get rid of Brian Jeremy and Billy Gray, calling them his brothers even though they betrayed him. He even questioned Elizabetta Torres once, asking if all the killing on a job was really necessary. For Johnny, murder had to be justified. He could do it in cold blood, but there had to be a reason. He'd carry out orders even if he disagreed, though he wouldn't hesitate to grumble about it. He had a cynical view on politics and war, believing they just made the fat cats fatter. He also really disliked cars, calling them cages. When it came to his faith, Johnny felt like he'd given up on it and instead believed in religion, which is an interesting distinction. His favorite tunes were usually blasting from Liberty Rock Radio and Liberty City Hardcore. Johnny's love life was also a bit of a mess. He used to date Ashley Butler, but he ended things because she was having an affair with Billy, and her drug addiction was something Johnny truly believed had ruined her life. Still, despite all that, he clearly cared for her and would drop everything to help her. Like the time she called him needing aid. He even showed sympathy for Roman Belich, a complete stranger, when he was forced to kidnap him to pay off Ashley's debt to a Russian gangster named Dmitry Razgalov. So in 2008, things kicked off in a big way. Billy Gray, the president of the Lost, got arrested for drug dealing and was sent to rehab by the court. With Billy out of the picture, Johnny stepped up as the acting president. He actually managed to do something pretty incredible. He secured a truce with the Lost Old's rivals, the Angels of Death. He even sold Billy's bike to help make it happen, which, as you can imagine, didn't sit well with Billy later. As soon as Billy got out of rehab, all hell broke loose. He was furious about his bike and immediately led the Lost, Johnny included, in an attack on the Angels to get it back. That truce Johnny worked so hard for, gone in a flash. This sparked a whole new war between the two gangs. Johnny was getting more and more annoyed with Billy. Instead of focusing on the club, Billy was back to his old ways, throwing wild parties at the clubhouse. Johnny, on the other hand, was all about business, trying to keep the club running and make money. One day, their lawyer, Dave Grossman, who was also a part-time biker, showed up, and Johnny tried to have a real talk with Billy about their growing differences. Just as they seemed to be getting somewhere, news came in. Some Lost members had been jumped by the Angels of Death. Johnny joined Billy and the others to rescue them. After that, Billy got wind that Jason Michaels, another Lost member, had been killed by some Eastern European guy. Billy blamed the Angels of Death, whipping the gang into a frenzy to attack the Angels clubhouse. During the chaos, Billy found 2 duffel bags full of heroin and, without a second thought, stole them, planning to sell them off. This, of course, just made the tension between him and Johnny even worse. Later, Billy sent Johnny to meet Elizabetta Torres, who had found a buyer for the stolen heroin. Johnny went along with Elizabetta's associates, Nico Bellic and Playboy X, for the deal. But it was a setup. The LCPD swooped in. In the ensuing chaos, Johnny managed to escape with the heroin. Not long after, Billy, still trying to pull strings, sent Johnny to meet Congressman Thomas Stubbs III, a shady politician. Believing Stubbs' connections would be good for the Lost, Johnny even found himself doing some dirty work for Stubbs, murdering people like Arthur Stubbs to help him inherit a fortune, and even a congressman to further Stubbs' re-election. He also took out a guy named Dan who was working on a case against Stubbs. Johnny, with his strong dislike for politics and his belief that fat cats benefit from everything, probably grumbled to himself the whole time. But he followed orders, helping this fat cat get even fatter. Eventually, the Lost found out the stolen heroin actually belonged to the Triads. Johnny and his best friend Jim Fitzgerald strongly advised returning it to avoid yet another war. After a lot of arguing, Billy and the club's secretary, Brian Jeremy, reluctantly agreed to the exchange. But they refused to actually be part of the deal, choosing to stand guard instead. What Johnny and Jim didn't know was that Billy had already met with the Triad's leader and told him to kill them both on sight. Billy was furious at their disloyalty. As soon as Johnny and Jim met the Triads, they were ambushed, forcing them to ditch the heroin and flee. In the chaos, Billy, trying to make his escape, crashed his bike and was arrested by the police, yelling furiously that Johnny had set him up. With Billy behind bars, Johnny officially became the president of the Lost, but his leadership was immediately challenged by Brian Jeremy, who blamed Johnny for Billy's arrest and had rallied his own loyal group within the gang. There were some failed attempts at peace, but it quickly escalated into a civil war within the Lost. Eventually, Ray Boccino, a criminal who regularly dealt with the Lost and wanted to get back to business, betrayed Brian, telling Johnny where he was hiding. Johnny, reluctant but knowing he had to put an end to it, went and dealt with Brian. While he hesitated to kill Brian because they were once brothers, he understood it was justified for the good of the club. During this time, Jim introduced Johnny to Malk and Deshawn, members of the Uptown Riders. And Johnny even found himself working with them on a few jobs for Elizabetta. Ashley also popped up again, calling Johnny for help because she owed money to Dmitry Raskolov's men. Johnny, though reluctant because of their past and her drug use, agreed to help her. He kidnapped Roman Bellic, Nico's cousin, with Malk's help, delivering him to a warehouse as instructed. It was a tough spot for Johnny as he sympathized with Roman but felt he had no choice. Then Boccino decided it was time for Johnny to pay him back. He reached out through Ashley and instructed Johnny to steal a shipment of diamonds that Tony Prince was about to buy. Johnny pulled it off, successfully stealing the diamonds and hiding them in trash bags for Boccino's men to pick up later. Once the diamonds were recovered, Boccino sent Johnny to go with Nico Bellic to the Libertonian to sell them to the Jewish mob, promising to split the profit. But the deal was ambushed by Luis Lopez, and in the confusion, Johnny decided to betray Boccino, escaping with the money and giving it to Jim. Boccino, furious, had Jim captured and tortured. He then used Jim's phone to lure Johnny to a place called Drusilla's. Johnny and Jim managed to escape and split up, but after dealing with hitmen sent by Bacino, Ashley called Johnny with the devastating news. Jim was dead, secretly killed by Nico. This hit Johnny hard. Jim was his best friend, and Johnny cared about him more than almost anyone else in the gang. After this crushing loss, Thomas Stubbs visited Johnny at the clubhouse, warning him to stay away from Bacino, who was under federal watch and likely headed for jail or worse. Stubbs also revealed something even more shocking. Billy was planning to rat out Johnny and other members of the Lost to get into witness protection. This was the final straw. Johnny rallied the remaining members of the Lost, storming the Alderney State Correctional Facility to silence Billy. The assault was bloody, with many Lost members dying, but Johnny finally executed Billy. He was reluctant to kill his former brother, but Billy's betrayal was undeniable. Johnny and the survivors returned to the clubhouse, only to find it ransacked by Bacino's men. With their Alderney chapter in ruins, Johnny and the other remaining Lost members knew it was over. They decided to burn down their clubhouse, watching it burn from the outside, a fiery end to an era. After the dust settled, Johnny's life was a mess. Billy's betrayal had shattered the Alderney chapter of the Lost, leaving only Johnny, Terry Thorpe, Clay Simmons, and Agnes Martin. Johnny cut ties with Ashley, refusing her request for $40 because he knew she'd just use it for drugs. He even admitted to Angus that he saw no good in Ashley, only that she seemed to F up everything around her. He also broke off with Thomas Stubbs, turning down an offer to work for him and sarcastically wishing him well in his corrupt life. In a phone call with Angus, Johnny revealed his plans to step away from the Lost and the criminal life for a while. He wanted to focus on sending money to Jim's widow and child, using the $2 million he'd stolen from the diamond deal ambush. Johnny, one of the more moral protagonists in the GTA series, actually managed to leave the criminal lifestyle, at least for a while, partly due to the guilt he felt over Jim's death. But the lure of the criminal world, or perhaps just the pull of his old habits, was strong. At some point between 2008 and 2013, Johnny went back to his old ways. He, Terry, Clay, Ashley, and several other Lost members moved to Blaine County, San Andreas, and started a new chapter there. The gang got deeply involved in drugs and arms dealing. This is where things really took a dark turn for Johnny. He became heavily addicted to meth, most likely influenced by Ashley, who he had gotten back together with despite his earlier decision. This addiction changed him. He became much thinner, his skin paler, and his once brawny frame was diminished. He had more visible scars on his face, and he seemed psychologically unstable, easily intimidated and lacking the courage he once had. In Blaine County, the Lost became affiliated with Trevor Phillips, who also ran a trading business there. Their relationship was rocky to say the least. Trevor would often send a hitman to steal from the Lost, and he frequently had sex with Ashley, much to Johnny's dismay. Johnny didn't even appear in Grand Theft Auto Online physically during this time. But Trevor's business partner, Ron Jakowski, mentioned him in a mission, hinting at the troubled relationship between the two. Then came the fall of 2013. Johnny, at his wit's end, decided to confront Trevor about having sex with Ashley again. Unfortunately for Johnny, Trevor had just found out that his old friend Michael Townley was still alive, and he was in a truly volatile state. Trevor snapped. He threw Johnny to the ground, smashed a beer bottle against his face, and then in a brutal display repeatedly stomped on his head. Ron Jakowski, Wade Hebert, and Ashley watched in horror as Johnny uttered his last words, "I messed up." Trevor, without a second thought, left the scene with Ron and Wade to deal with the rest of the Lost chapter, leaving Ashley to mourn over Johnny's lifeless body. Johnny was later briefly mentioned on a bail bond in a conversation between Trevor and a bounty target. He was also mentioned by Melvin, the owner of the Sandy Shores Ammunition. Melvin said Johnny wasn't that bad of a guy, to which Trevor, in his typical disturbing fashion, replied that he had a bit of Johnny on his foot, if Melvin was pining for a reunion, much to Melvin's horror. Even after his brutal death, Johnny's story wasn't quite over. In October 2023, during a Halloween event in Grand Theft Auto Online, Johnny's ghost appeared in Blaine County as part of a Ghosts Exposed documentary series. He haunted the very spot where he died, in front of Trevor's old home in Sandy Shores. His ghost floated in midair with glowing eyes and a slowed, echoing voice, repeating some of his lines from his final confrontation with Trevor, including a slowed-down version of the Lost and Damned ending theme. Johnny's loyalty ultimately led to the end of his chapter, but while the Lost were falling apart, Liberty City's nightlife was booming. We shifted from the grime of the biker world to the glamour of the club scene, following the man behind the velvet rope. This is the story of Luis Lopez. Luis Lopez grew up in Northwood, Liberty City, where trouble wasn't hard to find, and neither was he. The son of a hardworking Dominican mother and a ghost of a father, Luis was street smart, loyal, and dangerously protective. He served time, saw friends fall, and swore to leave the chaos behind. But then came Tony Prince, the nightlife king with deep debts and deadly enemies. Luis stepped in and never looked back. So, where do we start with Luis? Well, he's a proud Dominican, born and raised in the heart of Northwood, a tough neighborhood in Algonquin, Liberty City. His childhood wasn't exactly a fairy tale. His dad, a U.S. Marine, dipped out early, leaving his mom, Adriana Yanira Lopez, to raise Luis, his older brother Ernesto, and his younger sister Lita Lopez Wilkinson, all on her own. But Adriana was a force, not just for her own kids, but for the whole crew. She practically raised Luis's two best friends, Armando Torres and Enrique Bardas, who were practically glued to Luis's hip. These three, they were inseparable, causing trouble. Luis also grew up with some older kids in the neighborhood, guys like Oscar and Alonso Gomez, Teddy Benavides, and Willie Valerio. They were a few years older, about 3 to be exact, and they were already knee-deep in the drug game, ushering a lot of the younger cats into the dangerous lifestyle. Luis, Armando, and Enrique, they had their own thing going too. Enrique used to talk about how Luis would try his hand at rapping, while Enrique laid down some beats. Apparently, Luis wasn't exactly the next big thing. People used to crack up at his rhymes. And back then, Luis was a lot different physically. Armando and Enrique would tell stories about how scrawny he used to be, a far cry from the muscular dude we now know. They even had this wild memory about stealing liquor from Principal Fisher's office back in the day, claiming that detention was almost as bad as, well, you know, a violent and painful death. Little did they know Luis was about to experience something a whole lot worse. Life in Northwood was a constant grind, and for Luis, things took a dark turn when he was just 17. Back in the year 2000. This is a story he probably doesn't like to talk much about, but it's a crucial piece of his past. His younger sister Lita had a disturbing encounter with a teacher, and Luis, fueled by a protective fury that only a big brother can understand, took matters into his own hands. He shot the teacher, injuring him. Now, here's the crazy part. Even though this landed him in juvenile hall, it mysteriously doesn't show up on his official criminal record. It's almost like the city itself was trying to forget that particular blot. Armando and Enrique remember spending the summer of '99 with Luis. So, this whole ordeal happened during their next school year, a brutal end to his teenage innocence. But the trouble wasn't over. In 2001, Luis found himself arrested again, this time for Grand Theft Auto. Here's the real thing. He took the blame for a crime committed by Armando and Enrique. They weren't caught, and Luis, with that deep-seated loyalty he carries, stepped up and took the fall. This earned him a 2-year stretch in prison. And let me tell you, those 2 years changed him. He went in scrawny, just like his friends remembered. But the harsh reality of prison life, the constant threat of attack from other inmates, forced him to adapt. He spent his time building himself up, transforming his physique, becoming the muscular, formidable presence we see today. It was a physical and mental toughening that etched itself into his very being. You can hear the bitterness in his voice when he talks about that time, the fighting, the constant vigilance. He shows clear signs of resentment for the street life that put him there. a lifestyle he now despises, even as he still cares for the friends who are stuck in it. While he was locked up, his older brother Ernesto and younger sister Lita both moved out of Liberty City, starting their own families, building lives away from the struggles of Northwood. This left Luis as the main man for his mom, her primary source of income when he finally got out. He felt that weight, that responsibility, deeply. His legal troubles weren't quite done though. In 2003, he was arrested for a third time, this time for assault. Luckily, he managed to avoid another prison stint. This incident probably happened when he was arrested alongside Oscar Gomez and Willie Valerio. The LCPD, those guys never forget a face, and they still believe Luis was running with Gomez and Valerio for a few years, even though by this point the trio had actually gone their separate ways. Luis was trying to move on, but his past kept clinging to him. He's a reserved guy, Luis is. He doesn't often show his emotions, keeping his cards close to his chest, but you can tell when he's genuinely upset, like when he struggles to hold back his anger when someone threatens his mom. He's got this sarcastic wit too, always ready with a sharp comeback, and he's never afraid to stand up to anyone if he feels it necessary. Everything changed in 2005. Luis was 22. Still trying to navigate life after prison, still trying to shake off the shadows of his past. That's when he became the bodyguard for gay Tony Prince, the undisputed king of Liberty City's nightlife, the owner of legendary clubs like Maisonette 9 and Hercules. Luis quickly found himself in a unique relationship with Tony. It was something deeper than boss and employee, a mutual father-son bond, as they often described it. Tony saw something in Luis, a loyalty and a toughness that he desperately needed in his chaotic world. And Luis, well, he found a purpose, a new path away from the dead-end streets. He cut all his remaining ties with his old gang, though his friendship with Armando and Enrique remained solid. He even made what he thought was his last visit to an illegal cage-fighting ring. Though, as fate would have it, he'd return years later. Working for Tony, Luis's life became dramatically different, full of money, glamour, and exclusive parties. Sure, some of his old friends looked at him differently, maybe saw him as some kind of yuppie, but Luis had finally moved forward. Tony, being Tony, even paid for Luis to take helicopter flying lessons because, business, as evidenced by his Higgins Heli Tours piloting certificate hanging in his apartment. He also took advanced driving lessons, becoming the skilled operator we know him to be. He was adapting, learning, and stepping into a world he never imagined. Luis himself is a muscular man now. He's got those brown eyes, black hair, a mustache, and stubble that give him a rugged look. You'll notice an earring in his left ear, and if you look closely, a tattoo of his own name on the right side of his neck. His usual outfit is a cool black and white Letterman jacket, blue jeans, and white tennis shoes. But when he's on club business, he cleans up real nice, usually in a sharp suit with an earpiece, looking every bit the professional. He speaks with a New York Latino accent, which was even thicker back in the early days, and he'll often drop some Spanish words into his speech, making his dialogue truly authentic. He's good looking too, and his job as a bouncer for Tony's clubs means he's had plenty of opportunities to socialize, and even have casual flings with famous beautiful women. Though it's worth mentioning, there's this running joke in the game that Luis has a small penis. It's never confirmed if it's true, but he definitely gets angry when it's brought up. And some characters like Gracie and Daisy even playfully tease him about being a closeted gay guy, which again is just part of the banter around him. Fast forward to 2008, this is where things really pick up, the core of Luis's story in the Ballad of Gay Tony. Tony Prince was struggling, and I mean really struggling, to keep his clubs afloat. He'd borrowed money from every loan shark imaginable across the city, including the fearsome Ancelotti crime family, and was now buried under a mountain of debt. One day, Luis is at the bank trying to collect some cash for Tony when all hell breaks loose. He witnesses a robbery, not just any robbery, but one carried out by none other than Nico Bellic, along with Patrick and Derek McReary, and a guy named Michael Keane. Luis is caught in the middle, a hostage like everyone else. During the chaos, he briefly exchanges words with a fellow hostage, a guy named Eugene Reaper. Then, out of nowhere, Eugene pulls a gun and shoots Michael, killing him instantly, before being gunned down himself by Patrick and Derek. Just another day in Liberty City, right? Shortly after that insanity, Luis arrives at Tony's apartment, only to find two very unwelcome guests. Ancelotti family members Rocco Pelosi and Uncle Vince. They're there to collect on Tony's massive debts to the family's Don, Giovanni Ancelotti. Tony, desperate, pleads with Luis to help, and Luis, ever loyal, agrees. He starts doing jobs for Rocco, trying to chip away at Tony's debt. But he quickly develops a strong dislike for Rocco. Rocco is sleazy, manipulative, and everything Luis despises about the criminal underworld. Despite his new high-stakes life, Luis never forgets where he comes from. He continues to visit his mother, Adriana, and let me tell you, she is not a fan of his current lifestyle. She's constantly pushing him to go to college, to get a legitimate job, worried sick about the path he's chosen. But Luis, despite their disagreements, is still her primary support. He finds himself having to help her out with her own financial problems, specifically dealing with a particularly nasty loan shark named Mr. Santo, who's been giving her trouble. This is one of those moments where Luis is visibly struggling to restrain his anger towards Mr. Santo, his loyalty and love for his mother overriding his usual composure. He also keeps in touch with his old friends, Armando and Enrique. Despite Luis's disdain for the street life, he helps them out on a couple of drug deals. Both predictably go awry, proving Luis's point about the inherent chaos and danger of their world. He even advises them to get legitimate jobs, following his mother's sentiments. But hey, old friendships die hard, and Armando and Enrique do repay him with vehicles and weapons, keeping that street connection alive, even if Luis wishes it wasn't there. As he deals with Tony's financial mess, Luis gets involved with a couple of other colorful characters. First, there's Yusuf Amir, a ridiculously wealthy and eccentric real estate developer from Dubai. Yusuf is interested in buying and franchising Tony's clubs, and he quickly proves to be a genuine friend to Luis. They help each other out on several occasions, including Luis famously stealing a golden buzzard helicopter for Yusuf. Then there's Maury Kibbutz, another one of Tony's loners and a truly unbearable individual. Maury is self-centered, arrogant, and constantly demeaning. Luis absolutely takes a dislike to him, finding him incredibly irritating. Eventually, Luis manages to pay off Tony's debt to Maury, and he cuts ties with him, much to his relief. But in doing so, he befriends Maury's younger brother, Brucey. Brucey is a much more sympathetic character, constantly bullied and put down by his older brother, and Luis finds himself empathizing with him. The debt situation, however, is a constantly looming threat. Tony and his boyfriend, Evan Moss, hatch a desperate plan. They're going to buy $2 million worth of diamonds from a cook on the Platypus cargo ship, hoping to sell them for a higher price and clear their debts. Luis agrees to accompany them, his instincts probably screaming that this is a terrible idea, but his loyalty prevailing. They arrive at the ship, the deal is supposed to go down, but then absolute chaos. They're ambushed by members of the Lost MC, a ruthless biker gang led by Johnny Klebitz. Luis, in a desperate struggle, manages to kill all the bikers pursuing him and Tony, but in the brutal exchange, Johnny Klebitz kills Evan Moss and makes off with the diamonds, leaving Tony in even deeper, more desperate debt. But Lady Luck, or perhaps just sheer desperation, throws them a bone. Tony later hears a rumor. Those very diamonds are about to be exchanged in a deal at the Libertonian. This is their chance, their only chance. Luis is sent to retrieve them. He ambushes the deal, another chaotic scene involving Nico Bellic again, Johnny Klebitz, and members of the Jewish mob. Amidst the gunfire and confusion, Luis, with his characteristic precision, successfully snatches back the diamonds. With the police hot on his tail, he makes a daring escape in Yusuf's golden buzzard, the very helicopter he stole for him. The diamonds, now back in their possession, bring them to the attention of a truly terrifying figure, Ray Bulgarin. This guy is a dangerous Russian mobster, pure evil. Luis and Tony meet him at Maisonette 9. Bulgarin, smooth and menacing, offers to help with Tony's debts, in exchange for Luis doing a few jobs for him. It seemed like a lifeline, a way out, but things quickly unravel. Bulgarin, it turns out, learns about Luis and Tony's involvement with the diamonds, and that's when he reveals that the diamonds were his property all along. He's the one who killed the cook for stealing them. Bulgarin sees Luis and Tony as greedy opportunists trying to rob him. He betrays them, lures Luis into a brutal trap, threatening to have them both killed. Luis, through sheer skill and a bit of luck, manages to escape the ambush. But the message is clear. They've made a fatal mistake by getting involved with Bulgarin. You will stop at absolutely nothing until they are both dead. In a state of panic, Luis and Tony contemplate the unthinkable, giving Bulgarin the diamonds to appease him, to buy their lives back. But before they can even decide, another crisis hits. Gracie Ancelotti, Giovanni Ancelotti's daughter, is kidnapped by Nico Bellic and Patrick McReary, who demand a ransom from her father. Desperate, Luis and Tony are forced to trade the diamonds for Gracie, a desperate gamble to settle matters with the Ancelottis, and perhaps escape Bulgarin's wrath. They attempt the exchange, but as usual, nothing goes smoothly. Bulgarin learns of the deal and ambushes it with his men. In the ensuing commotion, a furious shootout. Luis and Tony manage to rescue Gracie and return her safely to her father, finally settling their massive debt with the Ancelotti family. But the diamonds, those precious $2 million, are lost for good in the chaos, vanishing into the Liberty City underworld. The situation with Bulgarin is now at a fever pitch. Not long after the Gracie debacle, Luis gets a chilling phone call from Rocco. He asks Luis to meet him and Uncle Vince in Middle Park. Once there, Rocco reveals that Giovanni Ancelotti had a meeting with Bulgarin, a sit-down to discuss the massive problems Luis and Tony have caused for both of them, and they came to a horrifying conclusion. Either Luis or Tony has to die. Rocco, with a sickening grin, advises Luis to personally kill Tony. He promises Luis that if he does it, he'll be spared by Bulgarin, and he'll even get to take over Tony's clubs, becoming the new king of nightlife. Luis, for a fleeting moment, contemplates it. The thought must have been terrifying, but his loyalty to Tony, that deep father-son bond, proves unbreakable. During a meeting with Tony, Rocco, and Vince at Maisonette 9, Luis makes his choice. He refuses. Instead of turning on Tony, he draws his weapon and shoots Vince, point blank. It's a shocking, decisive move. Tony advises Luis to spare Rocco. They don't need to further provoke Giovanni Ancelotti, not when they've just settled their debt with him. Then, as if on cue, Bulgarin's men storm the club. A furious wave of assassins sent to kill them both. Luis, true to form, fights them off, protecting Tony and his beloved Maisonette 9. Following this intense showdown, Tony, understandably shaken, decides it's time to flee Liberty City, to escape Bulgarin's relentless wrath. But Luis, this time, steps up as the stronger half of the partnership. He persuades Tony that running isn't the answer, that it's time for them to face their problems head-on, instead of forever avoiding them. He tells Tony to wait for him in Meadows Park, a quiet spot in the city, while he goes to finish off Bulgarin's entire syndicate. This is Luis's moment, his personal war. He starts by hitting Bulgarin where it hurts most, his heroin supply, stored at Firefly Island. Luis systematically destroys it, blowing it sky high, sending a clear message. As the explosions fade, Bulgarin's right-hand man, a brute named Timur, shows up. Timur, furious, reveals that Bulgarin is preparing to flee the city himself, escaping aboard his private jet at Francis International Airport. Luis, seeing his window, kills Timur, ending another threat. Then it's a race against time to the airport. Luis heads there, but he's not alone. Yusuf, the eccentric billionaire, comes through for him, providing aerial support with his buzzard helicopter, laying waste to the Russian thugs trying to stop Luis on the ground. Luis arrives just in time, bursting onto Bulgarin's private jet as it's preparing for takeoff. It's a final brutal confrontation. Luis kills Bulgarin and all of his remaining men mid-flight. In a last desperate act of vengeance, Bulgarin drops a grenade, destroying the plane. But Luis parachutes to safety, landing relatively unscathed. he makes his way to Meadows Park, where Tony is anxiously waiting. Tony thanks him, truly, for saving his business, saving them. Shortly after, Yusuf arrives, still keen on his business venture, and extends another offer to buy Tony's clubs, to franchise Maisonette 9 and Hercules. But Luis and Tony, having faced death and come out the other side, decline. They've been through too much, built too much. They opt to keep the clubs as a family business for the time being. This is also significant because Luis, in this whole chaotic saga, ends up killing Niko Bellic's antagonist, Ray Bulgarin, as a cool little detail that connects him to the other protagonists, much like how Niko takes out Johnny's antagonist, Ray Bacino. And Michael DeSanta later on GTA 5 finishes off Rocco Pelosi, the very secondary antagonist Luis spared. After the dust settles and the main story of the Ballad of Gay Tony concludes, Luis has a chance to catch up with a few people. He can call Maury, who surprisingly has had a change of heart. Apparently, Brucey punching him in the face really woke him up. Maury reveals he decided to join a real kibbutz, finally finding some peace, but still, predictably, refuses to share any of his money. Typical Maury. Luis also calls his mother, and for the first time in the entire game, she expresses genuine pride in him. She still tries one last time to convince him to go to college, but it's clear Luis has found his own path, and if Luis tries to call Rocco, he only gets a voicemail. It reveals that Rocco, smart man, has wisely left Liberty City, probably for good. So, what happens next for Luis and Tony? It's implied that eventually they do accept Yusuf's offer to franchise Maisonette 9 and Hercules. The club empire grows and Tony, probably seeking new horizons, ends up leaving Liberty City. This leaves Luis as the sole manager of the Liberty City branch of their shared empire. Their numbers are even removed from Luis's phone after the storyline, suggesting Tony's absence from Liberty City itself. Luis, the former street kid, is now the legitimate, mostly, business partner running the show. Years later, by 2018, the world of Grand Theft Auto continues to evolve. Tony Prince makes a grand return in the After Hours update for Grand Theft Auto Online, having moved to Los Santos with the ambitious goal of opening a successful nightclub there. He teams up with the GTA Online protagonist to establish this new venture. What happened to Luis specifically is left a bit ambiguous, but there's a crucial detail. A photo of Luis can be found inside Tony's office at the new club. This implies that their deep friendship endured, that even across the country their bond remains strong. They truly are family. And Luis still gets mentioned in that very same update. Jimmy Boston, a quirky character, drops Luis's name during the nightclub management rescue celebrity mission. He tells the GTA Online protagonist, "Did you ever hit up Maisonette 9 in Liberty City? That place was slammin'." Well, the bouncer, Luis, was really moody. Beyond the game he directly appears in, Luis has left his mark. He's mentioned on the GTA 4 and episodes from Liberty City in-game website. You've been celebinated.com, where the character, the Celebinator, refers to him, rather salaciously, as Tony Prince's rent boy princess. And if you're a real eagle-eyed fan, you might even spot an Easter egg in Grand Theft Auto 5 during a downtown Cabco random event, where Franklin Clinton helps a character named Walter rescue his niece from the lost MC. There's a Hexer motorcycle with a custom license plate that reads Luis Lopez. A subtle nod to the man himself, alongside other plates like Nikob for Niko Bellic and Roman B for Roman Bellic. Luis Lopez cleaned up the mess and became king of the clubs. With the Liberty City saga complete, the world waited. Then in 2013, Rockstar returned us to the West Coast, to a new San Andreas. And for the first time, we were following three men. It all starts with the man living a lie in a Vinewood mansion, Michael DeSanta. Michael DeSanta is a man full of contradictions. He once was a small-time crook from a broken home, then a master thief, and finally, believe it or not, a Hollywood producer. Before GTA 5 even begins, he's faked his death, betrayed his crew, and bought his way into a normal life that he doesn't even like. But Michael's story isn't just about trading crime for cameras. His story begins way back back, probably in the mid-1960s. Michael grew up in a trailer park, a far cry from the fancy mansion he'd eventually call home. Unlike his own spoiled kids, Michael didn't have much. His dad was a real piece of work, an alcoholic and abusive who eventually just vanished. Michael's mom would tell him all sorts of wild tales about where his dad went. He skipped town, got hit by a train, or even joined the Navy. Can you imagine the kind of childhood that creates? Now, despite all that, Michael had some talent. In high school, he was a star football quarterback, the kind who'd get his picture in the paper. But his temper, combined with constant injuries, meant he had to hang up his cleats and leave the sport he was good at. It seems like even early on, Michael's own personality got in the way of his success. By the time he was 20, Michael had already spent time behind bars. Not once, but twice. Prison isn't exactly a charm school, but he did pick up some unexpected skills. You know, like tattooing his name on a cellmate's backside. His first score was in 1988, pulling in $10,000 from a small business outside Carcer City. He was good at this too. He became a sharp shooter and a natural leader for heists. This is also when he met Lester Crest, a true mastermind who would become a key player in many of Michael's biggest jobs. Michael's path truly collided with Trevor Phillips during a cross-border smuggling run. Trevor was waiting for his boss when he saw 2 dust trails instead of 1. Out of the first car popped Michael, and out of the second, an older civilian Michael had just carjacked. As Michael tried to run, the civilian yelled to Trevor about what happened. Now, Trevor, well, being Trevor, didn't hesitate. He just shot the poor guy in the eye with a flare gun, killing him horribly. Then they dumped the body in a lake, and Trevor later described it as awful because the flare was still burning in the man's head. Both of them actually threw up from the smell. As horrific as it was, that moment showed them they made a good team. Michael took a liking to Trevor despite his madness and made him a partner. They had some solid wins for a while, but Michael later admitted they were always broke and always on the run. Trevor's violent outbursts often left a trail of bodies, and Michael's habit of quoting movies during jobs didn't exactly help them stay low-key. But with Lester and others by their side, they pulled off scores across the Midwest, always chasing that one big payday. In the early 1990s, Michael, Trevor, and another friend went to a strip club. That's where Michael met Amanda. She was originally interested in the other guy, but then she started flirting with Michael, and they began a relationship. Michael, using his ill-gotten gains, even paid for Amanda to get breast implants, which, oddly enough, helped her stripping and prostitution career. Who could have guessed? This even led to Michael running his own prostitution ring. After a few months, Michael and Amanda got married and had 2 kids, Tracy and Jimmy, all while still living in that trailer park. This is where Trevor began to see Michael as soft, because Michael was actually questioning his criminal life, worrying about his new family. In turn, Michael started to really dislike Trevor's unstable behavior, fearing he might one day hurt his wife and kids. Trevor later brought another criminal into the fold, Brad Snyder. Michael and Brad didn't exactly hit it off. They often didn't trust each other during jobs. Trevor even said Brad once planned to ditch Michael and just work with him. But Trevor, despite his wildness, stayed loyal to Michael. Then, sometime in 2004, Michael met Dave Norton, a corrupt FIB agent. They made a secret deal. Michael would cut ties with Trevor and Brad in exchange for a new life. Michael would pay Dave a hefty 5-figure sum every month, and Dave would move Michael and his family to Los Santos with new identities. As part of this crooked deal, Michael ratted out their upcoming robbery of a cash storage place in Ludendorff, North Yankton. The plan was a twisted one. Dave would wait near their escape point with a sniper rifle. He would kill Trevor because Michael believed Trevor would come after him and his family if he found out about the deal. Shoot Michael, who would pretend to be hit but was actually wearing a bulletproof vest, and arrest Brad. This plan was supposed to be a win-win. Michael would get a clean slate, and Dave would get a huge career boost for supposedly taking down America's most wanted man. But as with most plans in the criminal underworld, things went sideways. A guard at the front gate was shot and killed. Trevor then killed another guard who snuck up on Michael and held him at gunpoint. When Michael, Brad, and Trevor tried to escape, they were ambushed by over a dozen police officers, forcing them to shoot their way out. Their driver was killed by police, so Michael had to drive them to the spot where he and Dave had planned to meet the helicopter. The escape almost failed when a train hit their car as they tried to avoid a police roadblock. Then Dave accidentally shot Brad instead of Trevor because Brad walked into the line of fire. Dave then shot Michael as planned, and Michael pretended to be bleeding out, begging Trevor to leave him behind. Trevor, completely enraged, shot many police officers and even briefly took a woman hostage before barely escaping with his life. Trevor was never caught and went into hiding, believing Michael was dead. After this, Michael Townley was officially declared dead and buried in the Ludendorff Cemetery, but it was actually Brad who was buried in Michael's grave, having died from his gunshot wound. Dave and Michael both went to the funeral, with Michael watching from a distance. News reports claimed Michael was killed, Brad was imprisoned, and Trevor was still on the loose. Michael believed Trevor had eventually gotten himself killed, though he never got solid proof. Michael and his family, now using the surname De Santa, an old alias of Michael's, moved into a sprawling mansion in Rockford Hills, Los Santos. But Michael's new life, the one he sacrificed so much for, slowly fell apart. He became more and more unhappy, oddly missing his old life of crime, despite thinking he wanted a family life. He spent most of his days trying to escape the sadness by drinking, lounging unhappily by his pool, or cheating on Amanda with strippers. Amanda eventually caught up. Michael's neglect, self-centeredness, and his cheating led Amanda to blow a lot of their savings on plastic surgery and start cheating herself to get back at him. Their marriage devolved into a sort of open relationship. They wouldn't tell each other about their affairs. It wouldn't cost the other money, and it wouldn't happen in the house. At the same time, Tracy and Jimmy stopped respecting their dad because he didn't approve of their lifestyle choices. Jimmy was a lazy, video game addicted stoner, and Tracy was a demanding girl who would do anything for fame. Suffering a midlife crisis and a failing marriage, Michael started seeing Dr. Isaiah Friedlander, an expensive psychologist who, frankly, didn't seem to care much about Michael's actual problems. At one point, Friedlander even gave Michael medication that made him cry, wet himself, fall asleep at dinner, and howl at night. Realizing he got the doses wrong, he thankfully took Michael off them. In 2013, 9 years after faking his own death, Michael was just leaving a therapy session when fate threw someone unexpected in his path, Franklin Clinton. The two crossed paths outside the office, and in a casual conversation, Michael unknowingly pointed Franklin and his friend Lamar toward a car they were out to repossess. Not long after, Michael's son Jimmy bought an SUV from Simeon Yetarian, a slick Armenian car dealer running a shady business full of fake credit deals. When Jimmy conveniently missed a payment, Simeon sent Franklin to repossess the car straight from the De Santa home. Franklin slipped quietly into the garage and found the SUV, but as he pulled out, Michael sprang up from under a pile of blankets in the back seat, a pistol aimed at Franklin's head. Calm and cool, Michael told Franklin to drive straight to the dealership. Along the way, he even joked about buying Franklin a drink. When they arrived, still holding him at gunpoint, Michael made Franklin ram the SUV through the dealership's front window. Then, tossing some cash Franklin's way, he sent him off before beating Simeon senseless, warning him to never mess with his family again. A few days later, Michael was lounging in his backyard, sipping whiskey and trying to drown out the sound of Amanda and Tracy arguing. That's when Franklin strolled in, having taken Michael's earlier drink offer seriously. Caught him off guard, but amused, Michael agreed to hit a bar with him. But before they got there, Jimmy called. He tried to sell Michael's yacht, and the buyers had hijacked the trailer with Jimmy still on board. Furious, Michael and Franklin jumped into Amanda's car and gave chase. They managed to rescue Jimmy, with Franklin bravely jumping onto the yacht mid-chase to save him. Though the boat was lost when the car's engine gave out, Michael was mad but secretly impressed by Franklin's guts. Not long after, Michael came home to find Amanda in bed with her tennis coach who bolted in his underwear. Michael, burning with rage, called on Franklin again. The two chased the coach to a fancy house hanging over a hillside in Vinewood Hills. Michael wasn't done. He had Franklin attach a winch from their truck to the house's support beams and then ripped the deck right off the cliff. Franklin was stunned, but Michael felt like justice had been served. On the way back, Michael got a call from the coach. Turns out the house wasn't his. It belonged to the mistress of Martin Madrazo, the feared Mexican cartel leader. Madrazo's men came after them, but Michael and Franklin fought them off. Later, Madrazo himself showed up at Michael's house with his crew. Franklin warned Michael how dangerous this man was. Madrazo calmly asked for a bat, gave Michael a light smack, and then demanded $2.5 million to fix the damage. It was money Michael didn't have. The threat was clear: pay up or else. With no other choice, Michael picked up the phone and called an old partner, Lester. Michael tried to unwind with an old noir movie, hoping to escape the stress for a bit. But upstairs, Jimmy was yelling and cursing at his video game. Frustrated, Michael went up to tell him off. When Jimmy snapped back with an insult, Michael lost it. He hurled a chair straight at the TV. That only made Jimmy angrier. Michael, still seething, dared his son to hit him. But as quickly as the rage had come, it started to fade. He apologized and told Jimmy he was wasting his life. Wanting to reconnect, Michael convinced a grumbling Jimmy to go to Vespucci Beach for some father-son time. But even in the car, Jimmy kept arguing, blaming Michael for everything: his mental health, his life, all of it. At the beach, they had a quick bike race to the Del Perro Pier. Still mad about the TV and being dragged outside, Jimmy looked for a way to push back. He pointed out a fancy yacht nearby, casually mentioning that Tracy was on it with porn producers, possibly doing things she shouldn't. Michael, stunned and furious, realized Jimmy had only agreed to come to stir up trouble. He ripped off his shirt, dove into the water, and swam to the yacht. Once on board, he lost it. He tossed a speaker into the ocean and shoved a man off the boat. He grabbed Tracy and forced her onto a sea shark to take her back to shore. But the producers chased them, turning it into a full-blown shootout on the water. Michael managed to escape, but once on land, both Tracy and Jimmy walked away, still angry. Later, Michael met with Lester, an old friend with shady skills. Lester agreed to help him get the money he owed Madrazo, but only if Michael sabotaged a new phone that Jay Norris, the Life Invader CEO, was about to present to the world. Posing as an IT guy, Michael snuck into the Life Invader office. A programmer named Ricky mistook him for tech support and led him upstairs. Michael cleaned up Ricky's computer, swatting pop-ups and running antivirus. Then he found the prototype phone and secretly swapped in an explosive battery Lester had made. Back home, Michael tuned into the live broadcast of the product reveal. As Norris showed off the phone, Michael called it. The phone exploded next to Norris's head, killing him instantly and cutting the feed. Lester was thrilled and ready to help with the next job. Together, they started planning a jewelry heist. Michael wanted Franklin involved, believing it would be a good step for him. The robbery went off without a hitch. During it, Michael knocked down a traffic cop and quoted a line from a Solomon Richards movie: "You forget 1,000 things every day, pal. Make sure this is one of them." They paid off Madrazo and each got a cut. Meanwhile, out in Shady Shores, Trevor Phillips, thought dead after their last big job, saw a news report about the heist. The cop Michael had tackled repeated that movie quote, and it hit Trevor hard. Someone was either pretending to be Michael, or Michael had never died. Trevor sent Wade to track him down. When Wade came back with news that someone matching Michael's description was living in Los Santos, Trevor knew it was him, and he was going to find him. After laying low for a few days after the jewelry store heist, Michael went to the fridge and found weed inside. He instantly knew it was Jimmy's. Had kicked off an argument with Amanda, and things only got worse when her yoga instructor, Fabian, showed up uninvited. Michael couldn't stand him and threw out some insults right away. Then Jimmy walked in, looking for his weed, and Michael started messing with him over it. Out of nowhere, Trevor showed up, shocking everyone. He looked around at Michael's messed up family and asked, "Where's Tracy?" Jimmy broke the tension, saying she was auditioning for fame or shame. Knowing how bad her dancing was, Michael and Trevor rushed to the maid Chase Bank Arena. They got there just in time to see Tracy doing a super cringy over-the-top dance. Then Laszlo, the show's host, jumped in and started dancing with her, and that was it. Michael and Trevor lost it. They chased Laszlo in a stolen truck all the way to the Los Santos River. Laszlo's car broke down, and Trevor made him strip and dance while filming it on his phone. Michael thought it was hilarious. Tracy, though, was furious, and Michael didn't even care, which only made things worse between them. Soon after, Michael got a call from Dave Norton, the FIB guy who helped fake his death. Dave knew Michael was behind the jewelry heist and told him to meet at the Galileo Observatory. There, Dave said the FIB was catching on, and if they found out about their deal, they'd both be in serious trouble. So he gave Michael a choice: help him with some jobs, and he'd keep covering for him. Michael agreed. His first job was to find a guy named Ferdinand Kerimov, who the IAA claimed was dead. Dave knocked Michael out to sneak him into the morgue. Michael woke up mid-autopsy, fought off one of the coroners, and searched the place. He found Kerimov's ID on another body and called Dave. Then he escaped and hit up Franklin. When they met, Michael told him about his past with the FIB and warned him to leave town. But Franklin decided to stay and help. He wanted to return the favor. That's when Steve Haynes came into the picture. Dave's boss, a high-ranking FIB agent and totally corrupt. He told Michael that Kerimov was alive and being held by the IAA downtown. Michael was now part of a team with Trevor and Franklin. He introduced them to each other. And then he and Trevor flew to the IAA building in a chopper while Franklin gave sniper backup from a nearby roof. Michael rappelled down the side of the building, busted in, and rescued Kerimov. The FIB took him from there. Later on, Michael and Trevor were called to a warehouse at the port. Michael was sent with Dave to kill another suspected terrorist named Tahir Javan. While Haynes and Trevor tortured Kerimov to get info on what Javan looked like, Kerimov talked, and Michael took Javan out. After all that, Michael tried to chill on the couch with a movie and a smoke, but Amanda walked in and got mad at him for smoking inside. Another fight. Then Fabian showed up and invited Michael to do yoga with them. Amanda didn't love the idea, but they gave it a shot. It actually went okay until Fabian pulled a weird sexual pose on Amanda. Michael tried to attack Fabian but missed and fell into the pool instead. Amanda stormed off with Fabian. Later, Michael asked Jimmy to hang out. They went to Burger Shot and met one of Jimmy's friends, who gave Jimmy weed and a soda. On the drive home, Jimmy convinced Michael to take a sip. A minute later, Michael started feeling weird. Jimmy then admitted he drugged the drink with ketamine. He pushed Michael out of the car, said he was taking the car and some cash, and told Michael he was moving out. Michael started hallucinating, got abducted by aliens, and fell from the sky. He woke up in his underwear a few blocks from home. When he finally got back, he found a note from Amanda. She said she and the kids were leaving him, this time for good, because of everything he'd done. So later on, Trevor hits up Michael and Franklin for a heist he's cooking up. The plan? Steal some mystery cargo from a private military group called Merryweather. Everything goes smoothly, but turns out Trevor accidentally stole a super weapon. Lester shows up right after and freaks out, saying it's way too dangerous, especially in Trevor's hands. If they don't give it back, they'll all be hunted down non-stop. Michael and Franklin agreed to return it, and Trevor, super mad he can't keep it, lets it go anyway. Not long after, the gang gets called by agents Haynes and Norton for another job. This time, it's an armored truck full of drug money from the IAA. The agents are basically useless, so Michael suggests they do a classic Blitz play style robbery. Despite heavy resistance from the cops and SWAT, they pull it off. Michael delivers the cash to billionaire Devin Weston, who offers him a deal. Helps steal rare cars in exchange for a shot at working with Michael's movie idol, Solomon Richards. Michael jumps at the chance, and with Trevor and Franklin's help, pulls off the car heist. Eventually, Michael meets Richards, who hires him as an assistant. But there's drama. While working on the movie Meltdown, actor Milton McIlroy and his agent Rocco Pelosi, who's tied to the mob, try to force Richards to change Milton's deal. When Richards refuses, they get the director to stall production. Michael tracks down Rocco, beats him up, and takes Milton and the director on a wild helicopter ride to scare them into backing down. It works. Richards is impressed and tells Michael he's on track to become an associate producer. Then Martin Madrazo, the crime boss, calls in a favor. favor. He asks Michael and Trevor to shoot down a jet carrying his cousin, who's on his way to testify against him and recover some documents. Michael uses a remote sniper from a van to down the jet, and Trevor grabs the files. But when they return, Madrazo refuses to pay. Furious, Trevor attacks him and kidnaps his wife, Patricia, after noticing how badly Madrazo treats her. To stay alive, Michael hides out with Trevor and Patricia in Sandy Shores. Later, Haynes and Norton call up the crew for a dangerous job: break into the Humane Labs facility and steal a deadly neurotoxin. To afford the gear they need, like a cargo bob, they plan another heist. Rob the Blaine County Savings Bank in Paleto Bay. Trevor claims it's loaded with dirty money stolen by corrupt cops. While getting ready, Franklin calls Michael and Trevor. He's tracking the last of the O'Neill brothers, meth-cooking rednecks still mad about Trevor blowing up their lab. Michael and Trevor fly out, and using a thermal scope rifle, Michael snipes 2 of them. Franklin, with help from Lamar's dog Chop, takes out the last one. With stolen body armor and big guns, the team hits the bank. The job's a success, but most of the cash goes to Haynes and Norton so they can fund the Humane Labs mission, annoying the crew. While waiting, Michael and Trevor do one more job: rob a Merryweather train full of gold and valuable items to pay off Madrazo. Trevor crashes the train over Raton Canyon, and Michael drives into the water to grab the loot, including an ancient Aztec statue. Trevor's not thrilled with the item, but chills out when Michael brings up their dream score: robbing the Union Depository. Trevor says it can't be done, seems almost hopeless, but changes his mind when Michael challenges him, asking if he's too scared to try. Finally, the crew meets up with Haynes and Norton for the Humane Labs job. Haynes freaks out, realizing they need 3 more guys, something he forgot to mention. With no choice, Haynes and Norton help out. Michael and Norton go in for the toxin, while Trevor and Franklin handle the gateway. The job is a success, but as the chopper takes too long to leave, Haynes shoots himself in the leg to act like a victim and buy them time. It works, and everyone gets out clean. After making it back safely to Los Santos and sorting things out with Madrazo, Michael thought things might finally calm down. But then, bam, Trevor shows up at his house out of nowhere. He's got a wild idea: break Brad out of jail. Michael's not into it, and when he pushes back, the whole thing explodes into an argument. That's when Trevor finally pieces it all together. Brad isn't in jail. He's dead. And worse, he's buried in the grave that was supposed to be Michael's in North Yankton. Trevor bolts straight to Ludendorff to confirm it, with Michael racing after him. Sure enough, Trevor finds the truth at the grave, but before they can fully deal with it, a bunch of Triad goons show up. Turns out their boss, Wei Chang, wanted to meet Trevor. He'd hoped to partner with the O'Neill brothers before Trevor wiped them out. Even weirder, the Triads thought Trevor and Michael were a couple based on what they saw back in Sandy Shores. A shootout breaks out. Trevor escapes, leaving Michael to deal with the attackers. He gets captured and dragged back to Los Santos, ending up tied up in a slaughterhouse. Chang gives Trevor a call, saying if he doesn't show up, Michael's meat. Trevor, still furious about being lied to, plays it cool, tells Chang he loves Michael dearly, and hangs up, refusing to help. Chang doesn't take it well. He orders Michael tossed into a meat grinder, but just in time, Franklin and Lester swoop in for a rescue mission. Later, Franklin asks Michael what the hell went down in North Yankton. Michael finally opens up. He admits he betrayed Trevor back in the day to protect his family. He tries to dodge more questions by bringing up Devin Weston's car job, but Franklin says it's already done, and Weston stiffed them on the cash. Michael promises to deal with Weston the next time he's at the studio. And sure enough, back at work with Solomon, things go sideways again. He catches Solomon getting roughed up by Pelosi and his thug buddy Gianni. Michael jumps into action, chases them down, and kills them both. Grateful, Solomon names Michael an associate producer on his new film. Michael's over the moon. On his way out, he leaves Amanda a voicemail telling her he's finally doing something that matters. Something good. So Michael and Franklin get pulled in for one last job by good old Steve Haynes. The mission is to break into the FIB headquarters and erase some files that could expose Haynes as a double agent. Everything goes smoothly until Michael decides to delete the files on himself too. Just like that, Steve loses the leverage he had over him. Big move. Later at the court center, Michael shows up for what's supposed to be a debrief, but surprise, Haynes tries to have him arrested. Guns out, everyone's yelling, and then things go completely off the rails. The IAA shows up. A rogue FIB team rolls in, and Merryweather storms the place. Haynes gets shot in the leg leg but still manages to dip only after killing Sanchez. Michael and Norton fight their way out thanks to Trevor showing up with backup. And even though Trevor still hates Michael, he agrees not to kill him if they can pull off the Union Depository heist. Meanwhile, Michael's tired of being alone. With help from his son Jimmy, he manages to get the family back together. Things are finally looking up. He's got the house, the family, and he's working on Solomon Richards' new movie. But of course, that doesn't last. Devin Weston decides he's gonna wreck the movie and cash in the insurance to shut the studio down and build condos. Michael's furious. He chases Weston's lawyer all the way to the airport to grab the master copy. And here's a wild twist. She ends up getting sucked into a jet engine. Yeah, brutal. But Michael gets the film, and Solomon locks it down with a big premiere. At the premiere for Meltdown, Weston shows up, totally unhinged, and threatens to kill Michael's family. Michael rushes home and finds Merryweather Mercs already attacking. He takes them out and protects his family. Then he sends them away for their safety this time. The next day, Michael calls Lester from the pier, still angry but ready to go ahead with the big Union Depository hit. He also helps Franklin rescue Lamar, who got kidnapped by a rival gang. Then the crew finally pulls off the heist, over $200 million in gold. Huge score. After that, Michael goes to see Dr. Friedlander only to find out the guy's been using their therapy sessions to get famous. Michael's pissed. Friedlander bails and later sends an apology email, which Michael ignores. Now, here's where it all comes to a head. After the heist, both Haynes and Weston approach Franklin. Haynes wants Trevor gone, too unstable. Weston wants Michael dead, pure revenge. Franklin's got three choices: take out Trevor, take out Michael, or call them both up and go after their enemies instead. That's where Michael's story could go in a few different directions, depending on what Franklin chooses. So, if Franklin chose to kill Trevor, option A, here's how it went down. He called up Michael to let him know the plan. Michael said it was Franklin's choice, but was down to help if needed. Franklin tracked Trevor to the Murrieta oil fields, pulled a gun on him, and Trevor took off, starting a wild chase. Franklin called Michael for backup, and right on time, Michael rammed Trevor's truck, slamming him into a gas tanker. Gas spilled everywhere. Trevor crawled out furious, calling them traitors. They were his only real friends. Then one of them shot the gas, setting Trevor on fire. As they walked off, they talked about how Trevor was always unstable. They split up, and just before leaving, Franklin joked it was an illuminating experience. Michael told him to stay alive and that the rest was bullshit. Later on, they both stuck to their story. Killing Trevor was the right call, since he was just too dangerous. But after that, they didn't hang out anymore. If they crossed paths, Michael would say he needed space. Jimmy called Michael asking what happened, and Michael kind of admitted to being involved. That upset Jimmy. He stopped talking to Michael too. Then Ron, Trevor's buddy, emailed Michael, mad about Trevor's death and the lost business. Michael didn't care. He marked it as spam and told Ron to leave him alone. Also, Trevor's cut from the Union Depository job split between Michael and Franklin. Now, if Franklin chose to kill Michael, option B, it went down like this. Franklin called and asked Michael to meet in the desert. Michael showed up. While they were there, Amanda called. Tracy got into college. Right after the call, Michael realized what was going on. Franklin brought him there to kill him. He took off in his car, and Franklin gave chase all the way to the Palmer-Taylor Power Station. They ended up on a high walkway. They fought. Franklin pushed Michael off the edge, but then caught his arm. Michael hung there for a moment. Franklin could let go or try to pull him up. If he tried to help, Michael headbutted him, and Franklin let go. Michael fell to his death. After that, Trevor, Amanda, and Jimmy all figured out what happened and cut Franklin off. Michael's family sold the house, and they got his share of the gold. Now, for the ending most players say is the real one, option C, Death Wish. Franklin decides to save both Michael and Trevor, so he calls Lester, and Lester cooks up a plan. He leaks fake info to Haynes and Weston, saying the gold's being melted at a foundry. It's a trap. Both guys send in their forces, FIB agents and Merryweather squads. Franklin, Michael, Trevor, and even Lamar show up and ambush them. Once they clear out the enemies, they split the final hits. Trevor kills Haynes. Franklin takes out Wei Cheng. Michael deals with Stretch to keep Franklin's name clear. Then they all meet up again. Trevor had already kidnapped Weston and stuffed him in a trunk. They drive him out to a cliff, laugh in his face, and shove the car off. It explodes in the ocean. Game over for Weston. After all that chaos, Michael and Trevor finally bury the hatchet. The three agree to stay out of crime and stay friends. Michael later gets an email from Don Percival, Merryweather's CEO, basically saying thanks for killing Devin and helping him buy back shares. Michael ignores it. And if Michael and Trevor hang out after that, Michael actually apologizes and offers Trevor his share of the heist money. Trevor doesn't take the cash, but he does accept the apology. Finally, peace. In this ending, Michael stays at Richard's Majestic Studios. Fast forward to 2021. If Franklin happens to race through the studio chasing some golf carts, he might joke about hoping Michael's not working that day. It's a fun little nod that Michael's still in the game, living his Hollywood dream. Michael's perfect life was a prison of his own making. His midlife crisis was about to collide with a young hustler from South Los Santos, a kid who dreamed of getting out of the exact life Michael missed. This is Franklin Clinton. Franklin Clinton never had it easy. Born in South Los Santos in 1988, he grew up without a father, lost his mother to addiction, and was raised by his grandparents. Even then, the streets kept calling. Hustling from a young age, Franklin dreamed of something bigger. By 2013, he was repoing cars and chasing quick cash, until a run-in with Michael DeSanta changed everything. But Franklin's story was just getting started. Franklin wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth, or even a plastic one for that matter. He popped into the world in Los Santos back in 1988. His dad was a total deadbeat, apparently a violent guy who took out his frustration on Franklin's mom, then just vanished before Franklin was even born. It's a sad thought, but maybe that's why his mom fell into a cocaine addiction, trying to escape her own pain. And tragically, that addiction eventually took her life when Franklin was just a little kid. Can you imagine losing your mom so young and knowing she was struggling like that? It's a heavy start for anyone. After that, Franklin went to live with his grandparents. His grandma apparently spoiled him rotten, but even with all that love, Franklin had that street hustler spark in him. One of his first ventures was selling cigarettes with his buddy J.B. Bradshaw. They were raking in the cash, feeling like big shots until his grandpa caught them. It shows Franklin's nature, even as a kid, always looking for a way to make a buck, even if it was a little bit on the wrong side of the tracks. When his grandparents passed away, Franklin and his aunt Denise moved into a house on Forum Drive, left to them by his grandma. He went to Davis High School, where he hung out with his lifelong friends, Lamar Davis and Tanisha Jackson, and his cousin, Tanya Wiggins. But Franklin's school days were short-lived. He got kicked out for slugging a teacher. Classic Franklin, always acting on impulse. Around this time, he fully embraced the gang life, dealing drugs, jacking cars, and doing small-time bank robberies with Lamar. Their first bank robbery, though, was a bit of a flop. They only got $2,000 and it was useless because a dye pack exploded all over it. He even worked for a local drug dealer named Marcus, who he later ended up killing. Yep, even back then, Franklin wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. Now, about Tanisha. Franklin and Tanisha dated for a while, but she was never really on board with his gangster lifestyle. Her brother died in a gang-related incident, and she was terrified that Franklin's choices would bring harm to her too. So they broke up. But it wasn't a clean break. They had a long history, tons of mutual friends, and neither of them really wanted to move on completely. Tanisha wanted to stay friends, and Franklin always held on to the hope that they'd get back together. She ended up finding someone else, a brain surgeon named Jaden, who represented the stability and security she craved, a world away from the chaos Franklin was still living in. She even moved in with him. Franklin, though, he just couldn't let it go. You see it in the game. He's always trying to impress her, calling her after his first big heist, thinking maybe money would change her mind. Lamar even calls him out on it, saying Franklin's only trying to improve his life to win Tanisha back. It's pretty clear he was hung up on her. Fast forward to 2013 and Franklin and Lamar were working for a shady Armenian car salesman named Simeon Yetarian. Simeon was basically a loan shark, selling cars to people who couldn't afford them, and when they inevitably missed payments, Franklin and Lamar would go repossess the cars. This is where Franklin's story in GTA 5 really kicks off. So, we first see Franklin on a repo job with Lamar, and guess who they bump into? None other than Michael DeSanta, though they don't know it at the time. Michael, completely by accident, points them right to the car they're supposed to be taking. Later, Simeon sends them to repossess a motorcycle from a Vagos gang area. Things go downhill real quick. Lamar pulls a gun, a shootout starts, and they barely escape. Lamar, being Lamar, just takes the bike for himself, and Simeon blames Franklin. This gets Franklin fired. But then Michael, whose son Jimmy bought a car from Simeon and was being repoed, was actually hiding in the back seat when Franklin came for it. Michael pulls a gun on Franklin and makes him drive the car right through Simeon's dealership window. Michael even pays Franklin for a job well done. After losing his job, Franklin remembers Michael's casual offer of a drink, and he goes to find him. This is where their strange but effective partnership begins. Franklin helps Michael rescue Jimmy from his stolen yacht, and then, in a fit of rage, Michael and Franklin chase Amanda's tennis coach to a house in Vinewood Hills. Thinking it's the coach's place, they pull down the deck with a truck, completely destroying it. Only problem? It wasn't the coach's house. It belonged to Martin Madrazo, a seriously dangerous drug lord. Martin shows up at Michael's house, baseball bat in hand, demanding $2.5 million for the damage. This forces Michael back into the crime game, and Franklin is right there with him. Meanwhile, Lamar drags Franklin into a harebrained scheme to kidnap a Bala gang member named D. They chase him through the streets, and with the help of Franklin's dog, Chop, they manage to catch him. But Lamar, being an idiot, accidentally gives away their location to the police while on his phone, forcing them to let D go. And then, just as things couldn't get more complicated, Stretch gets out of prison. Stretch, an older gang member, immediately clashes with Franklin. It's clear there's bad blood from way back, even before the game starts. Franklin sees gang life as a way out, a stepping stone, but Stretch believes in the old ways, the hierarchy, the idea that older members deserve a cut of everything younger guys make. Franklin wants to be a leader, to build something new, even forming his own small group called the Forum Gangsters. Stretch sees this as disrespectful, constantly hounding Franklin for a cut of his new earnings, even when Franklin's working with Michael and Trevor. The beef with Stretch isn't just about money or respect, though. It blows up when Stretch sets up a drug deal with some Balas, which turns out to be an ambush. Stretch kills D, and the trio barely escape. Franklin is furious, realizing Stretch is bad news. Though Franklin is starting to understand, Stretch isn't just out to make money. He sees Lamar and Franklin as possible threats as part of his long-term plan to keep the gangs in line. Franklin is pulled deeper into Michael's world, meeting Trevor Phillips and Lester Crest, Michael's old partners in crime. Franklin accepts Michael's offer to join the Evangelico jewelry store heist, seeing it as his first real big score, a chance to prove himself. The heist is a success, and Franklin gets his cut, a taste of real money. He starts to distance himself from the families, which irritates Lamar and his aunt Denise, who constantly nag him about his disloyalty. Franklin just wants to get out, to make something of himself. One day, Trevor shows up at Franklin's house, uninvited. Lamar, being the loudmouth, tells Trevor about a drug deal Stretch arranged with the Balas. Trevor, naturally, is all in. The three of them, with Chop tagging along, head to Grove Street. Lamar is about to buy a brick of cocaine, but Trevor, with his bizarre genius, snatches it and realizes it's fake, just drywall. A massive shootout starts, and they're forced to fight their way out, eventually escaping on jet skis in the storm drain. During this chaos, Franklin tells Lamar that he thinks Stretch set them up, and honestly, it wouldn't be the last time Stretch pulled something like that. The trio then attempts to steal an experimental superweapon from a private security company called Merryweather. They succeed, but Lester wisely tells them to put it back. Taking something that powerful would make them targets of every government agency on the planet. Even Trevor, after some convincing, agrees it's not worth it. Franklin's reputation starts to grow. He gets employed by the eccentric billionaire Devin Weston, who wants him, Trevor, Michael, and later Lamar to steal some rare cars. He also takes on assassination jobs for Lester, which eventually leads him to move into a swanky new mansion in Vinewood Hills, a huge upgrade from his old place on Forum Drive. During this time, Michael and Trevor are laying low after a job for Martin Madrazo went sideways. Franklin, trying to find them, accidentally stumbles into a showdown with the remaining O'Neill brothers, who are out for revenge on Trevor. Franklin Franklin, Michael, and Trevor team up to take them down in a dramatic chase through Raton Canyon, ending with Chop helping Franklin track down the last O'Neill brother. Franklin, Michael, and Trevor then pull off a daring bank robbery in Blaine County, hitting a corrupt bank full of dirty cop money. They get away with millions, though a chunk of it goes to Steve Haynes and Dave Norton, the crooked FIB agents who are blackmailing Michael. Things get complicated with Devin Weston. Lamar steals the last car on Devin's list, and Franklin, Lamar, and Trevor deliver the cars. But Devin, being a slimy weasel, refuses to pay them, promising to invest their money instead. This infuriates them all. Then, the big one. Franklin discovers Michael has been kidnapped by the Los Santos Triads while he was in Ludendorff. He tries to get Trevor's help, but Trevor, having just realized Michael betrayed him years ago, refuses. So Franklin, showing his loyalty and courage, goes alone to rescue Michael from a slaughterhouse. This is where he learns that Michael has been secretly working with the FIB to get out of the game, distancing himself from Trevor. Michael and Franklin are forced to do one more job for Steve Haynes, breaking into the FIB building to retrieve incriminating evidence. They succeed, celebrating their victory with Lester. But the calm doesn't last long. Franklin's ex, Tanisha, shows up at his door, frantic. Stretch, that snake, has set Lamar up again with a huge group of ballas, holding him hostage at the Paleto Forest sawmill. Franklin, despite his frustrations with Lamar's stubbornness and inability to change, can't abandon his lifelong friend. He calls Michael and Trevor for backup, and the three of them, an unlikely but powerful team, storm the sawmill, taking down the ballas and rescuing Lamar. On the way home, Franklin and Lamar have a heart-to-heart, arguing about Franklin always bailing Lamar out and Lamar feeling abandoned. They both agree that Stretch probably sold out to the ballas while in prison. Franklin gives Lamar some tough love, telling him to clean up his act and get a real job. Right after dropping off Lamar, Franklin is cornered by Steve Haynes and Dave Norton. They tell him to kill Trevor, claiming he's a liability. Franklin tries to get them to make Michael do it, but Norton explains that Trevor doesn't trust Michael anymore. This puts Franklin in an impossible position, caught between two powerful groups and his complicated friendships. The trio then pulls off their biggest heist yet, the Union Depository, making off with millions in gold. They're at the top of their game, but the choices are about to get even harder. After the heist, Franklin is visited by Devin Weston, who orders him to kill Michael. Devin is furious because Michael caused the death of his lawyer, messed with his movie, and even tried to have his family killed. So Franklin is given three options: kill Trevor, kill Michael, or try to save them both. This is the moment of truth for Franklin, where all his loyalties and struggles come to a head. Option A, kill Trevor. Franklin meets Trevor at an oil field. Trevor, still naive about the meeting, is reminiscing about his friendship with Franklin, even as he complains about Michael. But Franklin, with a heavy heart, pulls a gun on him. Trevor is shocked, feeling utterly betrayed. He takes off in his truck, with Franklin hot on his tail. Franklin calls Michael for help, who eventually rams Trevor's truck, causing him to crash into a gas tank. Trevor, covered in gasoline, crawls out, cursing them both. Franklin or Michael shoots the gas, and Trevor burns to death in a fiery explosion. It's a brutal ending for Trevor, and Franklin and Michael try to justify it by saying his craziness led to his demise. Afterwards, Franklin calls Haynes, who agrees to take care of Devin Weston, but tells Franklin never to contact him again. Franklin and Michael's friendship is tense because of what they did, but they still hang out and keep saying they made the right choice. Jimmy, Michael's son, calls Franklin asking about Trevor, and Franklin lies, saying Steve Haynes' men killed him. Lamar calls, confirming his suspicions about Stretch, and goes into hiding, so he can only hang out at night. Tanisha calls to tell Franklin she's getting married and advises him to stay out of trouble. Lester splits Trevor's cut of the final heist between Franklin and Michael. Despite their shared experience, Michael eventually drifts away from Franklin, feeling indifferent and breaking ties. It's a lonely path for Franklin. Option B, kill Michael. Franklin meets Michael in the desert, pretending he wants to talk about their past, but Michael quickly realizes Franklin plans to kill him. He drives away fast, with Franklin chasing him. They end up at the Palmer-Taylor power station. The chase continues on foot until they reach a high walkway. After a fight, Franklin pushes Michael, Michael. Michael hangs on the edge, and Franklin can choose to help or let go. Either way, Michael falls and dies. Franklin feels heartbroken and full of regret. He calls Lamar, hoping they're still friends. He also calls Devin Weston, who says Haynes is already dead and Franklin is no longer useful. Trevor sends an email asking if Franklin killed Michael. Franklin says no, but Trevor doesn't believe him and tells him to stay away. If they meet, Trevor will be angry, saying Michael was better than Franklin and he would have forgiven him. Jimmy calls Franklin, first asking about his dad, then realizing what happened. He ends the friendship. Amanda, Michael's wife, also sends an email blaming Franklin and telling him to stay away. Lamar hides from Stretch and only goes out at night. Tanisha calls and says she's married now, and she tells Franklin to stay out of trouble. Lester gives Michael's share of the heist to his family, so Franklin and Trevor get nothing. This ending leaves Franklin alone, full of guilt and with fewer people in his life. Option C, the third way, save them both. This is the, quote, good ending. Franklin doesn't want to kill either friend, so he asks Lester for help. Lester makes a plan to get rid of all their enemies at once. They trick Devin Weston and Steve Haynes into thinking the gold is at a foundry. Franklin brings in Lamar, who stays outside as a lookout. Inside, Franklin finds Michael and Trevor arguing again, but he gets them to work together one last time. As agents from Merryweather and the FIB arrive, the three of them fight and win a huge gun battle. After the fight, Lester gives them the locations of their enemies. Trevor goes to kill Steve Haynes. Michael goes to kill Stretch. Franklin goes to kill Wei Chang. They each kill someone else's enemy, which helps hide their tracks. Later, the three meet again. They have kidnapped Devin Weston in his own car. Franklin smiles and says, "My bad, homie. I picked C. Ain't that a bitch?" They make fun of Devin and push his car off Mount Chiliad. It falls and explodes in the water. It's a fitting end for the greedy billionaire. After that, they agree to stop doing crimes but stay friends. As a surprise, the CEO of Merryweather thanks Franklin for killing Devin because it helped him buy back company shares cheaper. Tanisha still calls to say she's getting married and reminds Franklin to stay out of trouble. It's a little sad, but now that their enemies are gone, Franklin, Michael, and Trevor can live free and keep their friendships. Franklin finally takes control of his life and grows as a person. So, what happens to Franklin after the main story of GTA 5? If you played the contract update in GTA Online, you'll know Franklin is doing really well, and it's a big upgrade. He got a huge payout from the Union Depository heist, somewhere between $9 million and $42 million, based on how you played. He used that money wisely, making good investments and going straight. Here's the big news. Even though Tanisha married Jaden, the brain surgeon, at the end of GTA 5, things didn't last. At some point, they got divorced, and Tanisha got back with Franklin. Yes, that really happened. They got married, she moved into his fancy house on Wispy Mound Drive, and they started a family. If you visit his house in GTA Online, you'll see kids' toys, a backyard slide, and a sign that says, The Clintons. Their kids are even old enough to be in school. Lamar was right all along, telling Franklin to stick with Tanisha. It's like Tanisha saw that her stable life with Jaden wasn't what she truly wanted, and Franklin, now grown up and successful, became the guy she needed. Some of her social media posts even hinted at how different she and Jaden were. She never fully left her old life, even after marrying him. In 2021, Franklin becomes a real businessman, starting F. Clinton and Partner, a celebrity solutions agency for the rich and famous in Vinewood. Basically, he helps rich people with their problems, from stolen stuff to keeping secrets quiet. He brings in Imani, the smart daughter of an old friend, and even lets Lamar join the business, even though Lamar still does wild stuff. And yes, Chop is still around, now old but still loyal. Franklin even stays in touch with Michael, and a guard at his office mentions turning away Trevor, showing he's still linked to his old friends, even if they're not working together like before. The main story of The Contract is about Franklin helping Dr. Dre. Yes, the real Dr. Dre. Dre's phone with unreleased music on it was stolen. Franklin meets Dre at a golf course, and after some typical rich people drama, Franklin and the GTA Online protagonists, that's you, end up crashing into two annoying golfers with golf carts. It's a wild but funny start to a big new job. Franklin and Imani go after three people who played Dre's stolen tracks: a Vagos game member, a Triad member, and a crypto billionaire. They take care of all of them, get the music back, and finally find out who still has Dre's phone. Johnny Guns, a producer with a long fight with Dre. Franklin and the GTA Online protagonist help Dre deal with Johnny's private army and finally catch Johnny so Dre can face him. The contract also brings in short trips where we see more of Franklin and Lamar's friendship. DJ Pooh invites them and the GTA Online protagonist to Dr. Dre's studio. Lamar tries to rap and Franklin gets high with the protagonist. When Lamar tries to smoke too, Franklin tells him Tanisha won't like it, hinting that they're still married. Lamar, always chasing wild ideas, starts a weed business called LD Organics. He pulls Franklin into his crazy ideas, like raiding Vagos warehouses, or trying to make a deal with a strange actor from the Epsilon program, Jimmy Boston. Franklin, now smarter and more careful, warns Lamar about the dangers of the Vinewood crowd and how tricky they can be. One of the funniest parts is when Lamar builds a van that's made of weed. Franklin asks, "How you gonna smoke it if it's part of the van?" Classic moment. They try to get Jimmy Boston to promote the brand, but it all falls apart when the Vagos show up, leading to a big shootout. On the way back, the weed van starts burning in the sun, and they both get really high. Lamar, in a wild idea, drives it to a nightclub. The crowd smells the burning weed and starts cheering for LD Organics. It's messy, but it works. Franklin, always the one thinking ahead, says he has to get home to Tanisha. Lamar tries one time to pull Franklin in, offering him an internship, but Franklin just walks off like a boss. Most recently, in late 2023, Franklin was invited by DJ Pooh to the 10th anniversary party of the West Coast Classics at a nightclub hosted by Dom Funk. As part of the radio station's promo, DJ Pooh gave out media sticks with a recorded mix of Dom Funk's Even the Score for people who missed the event. At the 20-minute mark of the mix, Franklin tries to give a shout out to DJ Pooh on the mic, but Lamar grabs it from him, upset that Franklin is always winning and tries to give a shout out too. Franklin interrupts him and Dom Funk ends up calling nightclub security to break up their fight over the mic. So, while Franklin has grown and become successful, some things never change, especially his relationship with Lamar. Franklin's ambition put him on a collision course with two of the most dysfunctional partners in crime history. We've seen the retired crook and the young hustler. Now it's time for the psychopath. This is Trevor Phillips. Trevor Phillips is a complicated character. Before Grand Theft Auto 5 even loads, he's a broke drifter who's basically on crack, banned from the Air Force and wanted in 2 countries. After the credits roll, rumors say he's living in Vinewood, selling inner rage coaching to bored millionaires. But Trevor's story from crackhead to self-help guru isn't the entire story. Let's start by thinking about where Trevor came from. His childhood was far from ideal. He often talks about his mother, Mrs. Phillips, and not in a good way. It's heavily implied and sometimes outright stated through his own words and reactions that she was incredibly abusive towards him, physically, sexually, and mentally. No one could ever recover from this kind of upbringing. Whenever someone insults his mother or even uses a phrase like mother effer, Trevor gets extremely angry and defensive. It really bothers him. Interestingly, though, he never defends her memory as if she were a saint who passed away. His reactions are more about the pain she inflicted. Before he ever crossed paths with Michael Townley, the man who would become his closest partner in crime, Trevor was already a troubled individual. He mentions being a drifter up by the border, someone who was huffing gas and effing people over, killing, eating, whatever. He described it as fun, but admitted it was going nowhere. This tells us that the violence and chaos weren't things Michael taught him. They were already part of his nature. He even tried to find some structure by joining the Air Force. He had a talent for flying planes, a skill he apparently possessed even before enlisting. His dream, as he tells it, was to fly all day long and bomb villages and maybe, just maybe, drop the nuke. These aren't exactly the ambitions of a well-adjusted individual, but his military career was cut short. Just before he was supposed to get his wings, a psychological evaluation deemed him unstable. An evil witch, as he calls the evaluator, grounded him for life. So, the Air Force didn't make him crazy. He was considered unhinged even then, and this rejection likely just added to his frustrations and sense of alienation. Then came Michael Townley. Trevor was running a small air freight operation in North Yankton, moving less than legal cargo. He tells Lamar a detailed story about it.
And I don't know enough to check references, so I'm in. A few days later, I'm waiting on the runway. I see this Dust coming up off the road, only it ain't one dust trail, it's two. I got told one guy in cargo. First car comes through the gate, stops, someone comes out. It's my age, just 20, kinda fat but strong underneath.
Love at first sight.
Yeah, something like that. Other car comes through the gate. Old guy falls out, starts yelling and waving his arms and pointing at the kid.
The dude that got jacked?
Who fucking knows? Fat guy's running, old guy's shouting. I don't really care. I play peacemaker. Concerned citizen. I get close to the old guy and I pull out this flare gun I'm carrying around, squeeze the thing off in his eye.
Shit.
It was horrible. We had to pick up the body and dump it in a lake on the way. Thing was still burning in his head when we dropped him. Plane never smelt the same. Both of us threw up when we landed. It was quite a baptism.
He described it as horrible, with the body still burning as they dumped it in a lake. That was their baptism into a partnership. Trevor admitted that Michael didn't have the nerve back then, and he himself didn't have the direction. Together, they kind of worked. Michael had a huge effect on Trevor. While Trevor was already capable of violence, Michael, with his silver-tongued troll ways, as Trevor described him to Wade, pretending to talk about someone else named Trisha, persuaded him to channel his tendencies into organized robbery. Trevor found he was good at it. Michael didn't just become his best friend, he gave Trevor a purpose and, in a way, a surrogate family. Trevor grew close to Michael's wife, Amanda, and their children, Jimmy and Tracy. He became Uncle T to them. For Trevor, this connection, especially with the kids, was important because he knew what it was like to be ignored as a child. He was fiercely protective of Tracy, once telling Laszlo during the fame or shame mission that he'd rip the effing skin off anyone who effing wronged her because she had sat on his lap when she was 2. He was heartbroken when he thought he lost not just Michael, but the children as well, after Michael faked his death. Before things went south in North Yankton, another character, Brad Snyder, joined their crew. It wasn't always a trio of Michael, Trevor, and Brad from the very start. Lester talks about Brad almost as an afterthought when he talks about their past. Trevor himself said that after Michael went soft, he made a new friend called Brad, and was even thinking about cutting Mike off when everything fell apart. This shows that Trevor's devotion to Michael wasn't completely solid at that point, and he was thinking about taking a different path with Brad. It all came apart at the famous North Yankton job in Ludendorff. This was the heist where Michael planned to fake his own death with the help of a corrupt FIB agent, Dave Norton. The plan involved Michael getting shot by Dave, Brad getting arrested, and Trevor ideally getting killed or disappearing. The idea was to have a clean slate for Michael. They needed a body to pass off as Michael's, and Brad, being less known and now supposedly in the prison system, served that purpose. Trevor believed Michael died and Brad was in jail. He escaped, grieving the loss of his best friend, even getting a tattoo, R.I.P. Michael, to remember him. He also lost access to his share of their accumulated millions because, as he later told Michael, "You blew the identities," meaning their fake IDs and accounts were now useless or too risky to access. Trevor was on the run. For the next 9 years, Trevor stayed under the radar in Sandy Shores, a dry, rundown area in Blaine County. He picked this spot partly because it was out of the way, and partly because he thought Brad was locked up in a nearby prison. Maybe he wanted to be close in case there was ever a way to help him. During this time, Trevor started his own business, Trevor Phillips Industries. It was a small operation involved in selling drugs, mostly meth and weapons. He worked with a few people he trusted like Ron Jakowski, Wade Hebert, and Chef. They were loyal, but not especially skilled. Despite his past riches and his current criminal enterprises, he lived in a rundown trailer, though he owned an airfield. He claimed he liked being off the grid in a place that was real and authentic. But perhaps there was also an element of self-loathing and guilt that made him feel he didn't deserve better. He always dreamed of being an international drug dealer, and Sandy Shores gave him a small taste of that, even if it was mostly just cooking meth and feuding with local gangs like the Lost Motorcycle Club. His relationship with the Lost was initially somewhat familiar, if not friendly, but he eventually decided to take them out to eliminate competition for his own growing enterprise, famously stomping Johnny Klebitz to death in a fit of rage. The reason Trevor came back into Michael's life was a news story about a jewelry store robbery in Los Santos. A witness quoted one of the robbers saying something that sounded exactly like Michael's old movie quotes.
You forget 1,000 things every day, pal. Make sure this is one of them.
This, combined with it being a jewel store job, was too much of a coincidence. Trevor sent Wade to Los Santos to find a Michael of the right age, married to an Amanda with 2 kids. When Wade confirmed Michael De Santa, Michael's new name, existed, Trevor was happy that his friend was alive, but also felt immense anger and betrayal. Michael had let him believe he was dead for 9 years, abandoning him. His arrival in Los Santos was explosive, to say the least. He crashed into Michael's carefully constructed new life, terrifying his family. During the mission, Bury the Hatchet, Trevor forces Michael to drive to the cemetery in North Yankton, where Michael Townley is supposedly buried. Trevor digs up the grave, only to find Brad's decaying corpse inside. The realization that Michael had set him up, that Brad was dead all along, and that he was likely meant to be in that coffin too, was a devastating blow. This thing, it didn't work out the way it was supposed to, Michael says, and Trevor retorts, "Oh, how was that, huh? With Brad in the can and me in the ground? Or are both of us in the coffin?" During the events of GTA 5, Trevor's complicated personality is very clear. He kidnaps Patricia Madrazo, the wife of crime boss Martin Madrazo. His motivations seem partly to punish Martin for a pay dispute and mistreatment of Patricia, and partly because he develops a strange, almost tender affection for her. This could be linked to his own mother issues, seeking approval or affection from an older woman figure that his own mother never provided. He eventually has to return Patricia to Martin to smooth things over, a decision that clearly pains him. Trevor also builds a strange relationship with Franklin. At first, he treats Franklin like just another guy to use for jobs, but over time, he starts to respect him in his own twisted way. His work with the corrupt FIB agents, Steve Haynes and Dave Norton, is more about staying alive and avoiding prison. He also hopes they'll help get Brad out of jail, though he doesn't know Brad is actually dead. The letters he's been getting are fake, written by Dave to keep Trevor in the dark. One of the darkest moments tied to Trevor is what happens to Floyd Hebert and his girlfriend Deborah. Trevor had been staying in their apartment, making their lives miserable. After one too many confrontations, things escalate. When Franklin later goes to the apartment, it's a bloodbath, and Trevor emerges covered in blood, saying, "Tragedy struck." The game doesn't explicitly show what happened. Speculation suggests Floyd, enraged, might have attacked Deborah with a knife, leading her to shoot him, and then Trevor killed Deborah in a rage. Beta files suggest an earlier mission idea called Paradise Lost, where Trevor was intended to kill both. Given Trevor's volatility and the state of the scene, it's clear he was directly involved in their violent deaths. Trevor's core principle, if he can be said to have one, is loyalty, however twisted his understanding of it might be. Loyalty is the code, he says. Kill strangers, protect friends, eat enemies. This loyalty, combined with guilt over letting down his friends, caused him to idolize Brad after North Yankton, forgetting Brad's negative traits. It was only much later, after forgiving Michael and himself to some degree, that he could admit Brad was a bit of a dick. This fierce loyalty is most evident in ending B of the game, when Franklin calls Trevor for help to kill Michael. Trevor, despite knowing Michael betrayed him and even wanted him dead, refuses. "You're turning on him? I have had enough traitors in my life," he tells Franklin. He wouldn't be part of such a betrayal, even against someone who had wronged him so deeply. This leads to the game's 3 possible endings. In ending A, Franklin and Michael hunt down and kill Trevor. Michael shows some regret, feeling it was a point where even assholes like us say enough is effing enough. In ending B, Franklin, with Trevor's refusal to help, kills Michael. The canonical ending, however, is ending C, Death Wish. In this scenario, Franklin refuses to kill either Michael or Trevor, and instead they team up to eliminate all their major enemies: Evan Weston, Steve Haynes, Wei Chang, and Stretch. Trevor participates partly to support his friends, partly for self-preservation, and perhaps because, deep down, despite everything, there was still a bond with Michael. He tells Michael, "I suppose it was a long time ago, and I suppose we had some fun here, and I suppose I made my mind up that he's a dick. But the people against us were worse, so I killed the bigger dick." And Michael lucked out. He admits he still hates Michael to some degree, but there's a sense of acceptance, even a twisted kind of affection. After this ending, Dave Norton, now in a more powerful position, is expected to protect all 3 of them from future legal troubles, meaning Trevor is no longer vulnerable as he was in Sandy Shores. What happens to Trevor after the main story of GTA 5? A side mission appears for him involving his mother, Mrs. Phillips. She suddenly suddenly shows up in his trailer, beating him for never visiting her in jail. She sends him to get some dilutamol pills. When Trevor returns, she's gone, vanished without a trace. This leaves players wondering if she was real or a delusion. Arguments can be made for both. Trevor isn't generally shown to hallucinate unless he's on drugs, and he didn't seem to be. Ron even leaves a Life Invader message asking Trevor, "Hey, aren't you going to introduce me to your mother?" suggesting Ron was aware of her presence. Michael also asks about her during a hangout, and Trevor says he doesn't want her to see him as he is. However, given her abusive nature and sudden disappearance, it's plausible she just got bored and left. More concrete information about Trevor's post-game life comes from the Smuggler's Run DLC for GTA Online, which is set in 2017, a few years after the events of GTA 5. Ron Jakowski contacts the player and mentions Trevor. He says, "That bastard my best friend. Oh, he's supposed to protect me forever? Then he goes all Vinewood on me? He's too important for Ron now, but he's a guru. He's a lifestyle coach. I don't know what he is. I bet he's got abs." This suggests Trevor has moved on from his Sandy Shores existence. He's embraced a new persona, possibly in Los Santos, Vinewood, and has become some sort of self-help guru or lifestyle coach. This might sound absurd for someone like Trevor, but given his charisma, intensity, and newfound financial stability and protection thanks to Dave Norton, it's a bizarrely fitting, if ironic, future for him. He has more money from the Big Score connections, and he's no longer forced to live in hiding. This guru path might be his way of channeling his unique energy, or perhaps it's just another elaborate chaotic venture. If Trevor never met Michael, he probably would have ended up dead or in jail much sooner. Michael gave him a goal, and even though things got messy, they made a powerful team for a while. Trevor's story is unforgettable because under all the violence, there's a real person who just wanted to be seen and understood. If you want to see the entire story of this guy, make sure to click the video on screen right now.